This episode of The Three-Body Problem is sponsored by ThreatLocker. Let's be real. Most cybersecurity tools only act after the damage is done. Detection is reactive. Prevention is what actually changes the game. That's where ThreatLocker comes in. Instead of chasing threats, ThreatLocker helps organizations stop them at the source before they ever run. Only approved applications, scripts, and executables are allowed. Everything else? Denied by default. It's zero trust made practical and scalable for modern environments. Learn more at threatlocker.com/threebodyproblem and see how default deny can finally give you real control over your environment.
We're not
What's
ready.
going on?
I've slept way too little. Then I went down a rabbit hole of like I wanted to do my shout outs like for the whole year and it was like ended up with a list of like 100 people. Like you remember like the end of SNL when people would like just start like Tina Fey and stuff would just start shouting out every person on earth. Like that's how I feel like it would be if we did it.
Do me a favor, Juanito, get in the middle of that shot. You're like halfway out of the shot. There you go. I think we're live on YouTube. Can someone double check?
We are.
We are?
We are.
Christine?
Yes.
I'm a mess.
Good
Why
morning, everyone. Merry Christmas. Hope you guys are recovering after having eaten and drinking enough. Merry Christmas to the audience. This is episode 78 of The Three-Body Problem, a podcast that has never won an award, never even been nominated for an award. But for this final show of the year, we are going to make up our own awards and give them away today. So this is our year-end awards show. Thank you for joining us. I see a bunch of people checking in from YouTube. In chat, we're going to be taking questions in chat as well. So if you want to just dump your questions in there, share the link with your friends on LinkedIn and Twitter and Blue Sky and wherever they are. Let me check in with the buddies. Costi and Ryu in Bucharest, Romania. How are you, my friend?
Good. It's winter here and things are quiet, quiet holidays. The turkey, not here. we typically eat cake and this kind of cold thing, which is made out of fat, like of turkey fat. Like you boil it until the bones melt and then it becomes some kind of a jello, like a salty jello. We call it pifier.
What's going on?
What is going on?
How was your Christmas, Juanito?
It was quiet. It was rough, to be honest. It's been like a rough 10 days to 12 days or so for me, but I think the year is closing out on a high note, but it hasn't been without like a lot of emotional turmoil. So,
So the usual.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing new under the sun. I'm all in my feels as always.
Before we get to the show this week, I want to spend just a second to say thank you to our sponsors and the people who are actually paying money to present this show. This week's show is presented by ThreatLocker. Check them out at threatlocker.com/threebodyproblem if you're looking for any sort of default denied tech. Our thanks as well to Material Security, who you'll be hearing from all of January, and the folks at Thinkst Canary, who are Thinkst, will be coming aboard as a sponsor. With that out of the way, before we get to our awards show, there's not much in the news to touch on. Last week, we got bombarded with everyone dumping their last Chinese APT reports. We touched on a bunch of them. We missed a bunch of them. This week, things seem to be quiet. Juanito, I want to touch on one thing, though. It seems like there's a lot of turmoil-type reporting out of CISA, your government's cybersecurity agency with staffers getting suspended for getting the deputy director to take a lie detector test to access information, and then those guys got fired. Why are you laughing?
Because that's the funniest fucking story of all time.
So Politico reported a pretty detailed reporting with 8 sources just documenting this case. What happened, and does this surprise you at all?
I have no idea what happened. I have no idea what on earth is possibly going on in there. The whole thing is absolutely bizarre, right? Like I have no firsthand knowledge of anything as to whatever the hell's going on at CISA anymore. I have no clue. But the premise of this is essentially that like this deputy director couldn't pass a poly, and of course that's like massively problematic for like clearance and all this other stuff. But for some reason, they're blaming the staff that convinced him to take a poly. Like it's a very bizarre, like Orwellian situation where you go, how dare you guys put me through a test you knew I wouldn't pass? It's just baffling. Like, it's genuinely insane. So I don't know what the fuck is going on at all, but interesting times. And then you get the Dave Stern thing, which was like the other story that got reported. I don't know, Ryan, if you had that in mind as well.
Yeah, you can dump that in there as well. There's a pre-notification or ransomware pre-notification service that was run by what's his name?
Dave Stern.
Dave Stern. I have my own thoughts on this, but we can also touch on this very quickly. The idea is that he was like the voice and the man behind this program and this pre-ransomware notification service that went out when they got a heads up that maybe some companies would be targeted and so on. He had been internally at CISA. He was forced into some sort of transfer to move to Boston or some weird thing. And the reporting is that, oh my God, this service is going to go out of place. Like, help me understand what it is.
I honestly have no idea what the hell is going on. And moreover, I don't even know, I don't know if Dave was in touch with these folks for this reporting, if he's like on board with getting blasted like this. So I'm like a little bit hesitant about that. But I can at least I can at least say from what I knew, that ransomware pre-notification thing was a labor of love. I've mentioned it several times on this podcast as something that like people did because, out of the goodness of their own hearts. And in that was originally both it was Aurora Johnson, who's our friend now over at SpyCloud, and Dave Stern. And eventually Aurora goes out to SpyCloud, and then it was basically Dave Stern holding down the fort. And my understanding and what I've seen firsthand was, I mean, this guy is just a mensch for being willing to continue that like thankless, super difficult, super unpleasant work that saved a fuck ton of money and saved a lot of people a lot of heartache. But I didn't ever see him get any support, as far as I can tell, like whatsoever.
And this is why I didn't like much this is why the story touched a nerve with me. If this program is so successful and so important, why is it up to a one-man passion project? Why couldn't it, even the previous administration of CISA that is now, making all this noise, supported the guy and funded it and staffed it if it was so important? Why are all these things such individual passion projects? And I bring it up because now we have secure by design leaders all over the place. You can see the complaints about people building up their own passion projects just so that they can get their careers going in certain directions. You understand the question I'm asking?
I understand. Why wasn't
Dave Stern properly?
So I understand the question you're asking. And again, I'm just a little bit hesitant because it's not like I talked to Dave before this, and I consider him a friend. And I really don't want to like put him in a bad place. But also, let me be clear. I have been signaling my frustration with stuff like this, specifically towards the tail end of the Jen Easterly era. And things like this got brought up to them and to her, to Goldstein, to everybody directly. First, like, there's no such thing as like, well, the message didn't make it up. There were a lot of really difficult people managing JCDC stuff, and we made a point of going all the way to talking to leadership, which of course doesn't make a lot of people underneath happy, and yet we didn't really see Aurora get much support in her time there, and then we didn't really see Dave get much support in his time there. If anything, if I remember correctly, there was a time when they even transferred the guy, and he was still doing the calls, just again out of the goodness of his heart. I never wanted to bring up those sorts of specifics in a public forum when, when those folks were still in there and make their lives harder. But maybe folks can understand why I've been so vitriolic towards the leadership at CISA, or the former leadership at CISA, even when maybe it wasn't a palatable thing to do. And I know a lot of folks, it rubbed them the wrong way that I wasn't super nice towards Jen towards the end and stuff like that. But things like this were firsthand things that we watched, and things that, disappointments that I personally felt from, having had conversations directly with these leaders and then watching the decisions and the things that they did, and just not being able to reconcile that with the kind of grandstanding and public profile that we saw, being sort of projected in the media and everywhere else. Like that's where I was having like massive cognitive dissonance. And hopefully, I didn't plan this, but like now that this is out, like hopefully it makes more sense to people who are like, God, dude, like why won't you stop like picking on these guys? It's like they're doing things that I just can't get okay with.
I agree with you, and this is why this story doesn't sit right with me. I remember when the CISA administration changed, and I asked on this podcast, I think Kostin specifically, what advice do you have for this new leadership? What would you like to see out of CISA moving forward? We had spent a lot of time criticizing them in the past for budgeting and all of this stuff, and Kostin said, listen, I don't want all this hooey-fooey stuff. I want the nuts and bolts. Give me some data. Give me some information. Do what the Europeans were doing here. I think, what was the name of the agency you mentioned, Kostin, a European agency?
Viginum or one of those guys.
Yeah,
Viginum in France. Yeah,
and this this Dave Stern service is what Kostin was talking about. Like, this is the stuff that people actually need, the meat and potato stuff. And the fact that there's a one-man guy, and if he leaves, the service is out of bounds, it's just madness to me. It's crazy pants to me. Kostin, when you read this stuff, does this resonate with you at all? Are you over in Europe laughing at us?
I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing at all. And I mean, the Europe is not necessarily a lot better than this. And what you are saying is actually a characteristic of a lot of things that I've seen in many, many different companies. Sometimes there's just one guy who develops something amazing, be it a project, one of his pet things, that he puts a lot of passion into and he builds from scratch. And sometimes that becomes the reason why whatever company is actually known for. And you can say maybe this is like the reason why CISA was known for. Again, I'm not quite familiar with the service in question since I never got a notification from them. Well, also, I haven't personally met anyone who got a notification. But again, the feedback that I hear is pretty good. I think, though, that you guys skipped the first story a bit too quickly. And I wanted to ask you, since I'm not very familiar with this lie detector test, but why would someone fail the test? That's like the first question. Maybe you know. And two, what
it's
happens?
A lie detector
No,
test.
man,
Why
but
do you think they fail?
Yeah, but like, what did he lie about? Did he lie about drugs? Did he lie about being a communist spy? Did he lie about being a Chinese spy? Like, then the second thing is, what happens when you fail the test? Do you go to jail? Like, is it like something like that? Or
Well, the test first,
can you enlighten us?
What?
Go ahead, Juan.
Can you enlighten us? Like, tell us more.
So, look, a poly is its own kind of bizarre ritual, but it is like part and parcel of being a part of the intelligence community here and anywhere else, right? You're going to get polygraphed. It's just a part of like the deep unpleasantness for anybody that has ever served in any kind of intelligence service, and in particular for anybody who's dealt with like the clearance process here. I've never dealt with the clearance process in the US. I have no idea what they ask you firsthand, but you hear a lot of stories and there's a lot of discussions about, how bad some of these polys can be, depending on where, what kind of service you're going into, what level of service, the things that people will ask you, or just say things to kind of like throw you off guard. And in the things that are disqualifying, there's being dishonest. There's also admitting to certain types of criminality that are obviously not going to fly, right? Like if you're very truthful about being a pedophile, I'm sure they'll appreciate your candor, but I don't think that's going to go very well for you, and rightly so. And then there's also things around like drugs, which is why we've always had these kind of insane discussions with a lot of like with people who are young and nervous, who want to go into the IC, who like are kind of channeling their whole lives and careers towards being in government service, and they're terrified because they smoked like a bit of weed one time in high school or something, and you're just like things like that are why you hear me get so when Rob Joyce was trying to like recruit for NSA and like talk about like how important it was to get people in for service, I was the first one to kind of jump in there, I think on Twitter or here, and just say, well, so does that mean you're relaxing like the bullshit rules around people getting like smoking weed, right? Like honestly, I think that's a bigger deal breaker for folks than the pay, than the lack of publicity, than any of the strictures, right? At the end of the day, you're getting to do really cool shit for your work that you couldn't do anywhere else. And yeah, maybe you're not getting paid the money that you would be, but like it's fucking cool and you're serving your country. The part where you also have to be some like straight edge kid for whom like the only okay thing is to not go to therapy and drink your way into a fucking early grave or a drinking problem, which is apparently perfectly okay with the intelligence community. But having an edible means that you're a deviant is just a little too much cognitive dissonance for most of the people I know to swallow.
It's widely used in Washington, D.C. circles, right? Everywhere.
Yeah.
Like
anybody who has like the most basic level of access probably holds some bullshit clearance. Like obviously the really high end clearances are meaningful, like whatever it is, that you get closer to the top. But the numbers for people who hold any kind of clearance, like a very basic kind of clearance, are like staggering. Like it's like 500,000 people or something like that, which is just insane, right? Like so that I just bring that up not so much in the discussion of clearances, but really in the context of these fucking polygraphs, which are like very common. Like almost anybody who ends up in some kind of like government service, even adjacent to something to do with the IC, is very likely to end up in a poly at some point. So reading this story in that light, it's bizarre. It's bizarre that we can somehow find fault with the people that got the dude to take the test, as opposed to with the fact that this person cannot pass the test.
I get a question on stream from Yvonne, which is, isn't it a known fact that polygraphs are not really reliable as lie detectors? I mean,
absolutely.
It's not, in some court cases, it's not even acceptable, right?
No, yeah, Yvonne is absolutely correct. It is not a very scientific thing. There are ways that you can be taught to game a polygraph. There's a reason why they try not to document a lot of the process, though if you really want it, you can find it. But to be fair, I think that there's also a recognition of how gameable it is, even with the people who provide it. It's just that for most people that you're going to put through that process, it's such a nerve-wracking experience. Like if you've ever sat for a polygraph, you can't help it. Well, not being a sociopath myself, which honestly, like there are people who are sociopaths fucking apparently flatline polygraphs, no problem. Like it's like a documented thing. And there's some other types of PTSD and whatnot like that will mess with a polygraph. Because really what it's doing is like it's measuring a certain amount of like physical activation and arousal. Are you shifting in your seat? Are you sweating? Are your palms sweaty? Are you, suddenly holding yourself up in a different posture? Is your heart rate going up? So it's not a very scientific thing about lying, but it certainly creates boiler room type dynamics where you can get a rise out of somebody and essentially get them into a position to either confess or self-incriminate or at least show you what they would say or do under duress. So you use it as kind of like an anomaly detection mechanism, essentially. They make you nervous as shit. They ask you a bunch of questions. Have you ever kissed a boy, right? Like, do you watch messed up pornography? Have you ever stolen any money out of your mom's purse? Are you a communist, right? Like, and you just, the minute your body goes, right, they're like, there, what the fuck was that? Explain yourself, you fucking deviant, right? Like that's basically the logic behind it.
Kostin, does that answer your question?
I guess it does. Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of questions. Why he failed the test? This is like a mystery. Was it because of drugs? Was it because he
Yeah.
stole money from his mother's purse? Is it
Can
maybe
you
because
make
he likes cats? I don't know.
I mean, dude, I don't think any
Juanito,
of
can you
us
make
would
someone
pass
fail
a
the test?
poly.
Probably.
No,
I think
Can
you
you
can.
can you
It's
manipulate
different.
things in a way to make someone fail the test?
It's different. I don't think so because, frankly, well, look, I'm not involved in this. I have no idea the specifics. But my understanding is like in all things in the US government, the polygraph is going to be administered by a bureaucrat from a specific department or a contractor of some sort. And there's going to be some standardized set of questions and things and procedure. And let's also be clear about something, like not to malign the person that failed the poly. I'm pretty certain all of us on this podcast would fail a standard US clearance polygraph. Like Ryan and
100%.
I especially, but also like just on the stuff we've worked on, the people we hang out with, close and continuing relationships with foreigners, all kind like Kostin and I won't leave any US malware alone. We keep reading classified documents the second they leak. We're high half of the time, right? Like there's so many ways that we would just not not pass a poly. So I honestly would not, I wouldn't necessarily look at this person failing and take that as a sign of like serious deviousness and criminality. I would take it as a sign that they couldn't pass a poly. And the bizarre thing is that they're fucking that you would blame the people who made you take the poly in the first place. Because that's like, look, there's a reason I have many reasons I don't want to go into government service, but one of the reasons it's like immediately disqualified for me is like, I'm not going to pass the poly. And I tell that to the people who ever have asked me, because folks have actually asked me like, oh, would you like to do this or advise on that? Or what if you came in to do this thing? And you're like, look, that sounds fucking awesome. I love my country. I would love to have the opportunity to serve somehow. I got
Mr.
that
America can't pass a poly.
ridiculous, dude. I got that ridiculous award for spending way too much time for free doing stuff for USG. So it's not like I'm against it, but I would immediately tell them like, guys, I'm not going to pass a poly. I'm just not going to pass it. So, and I don't enjoy the idea at this stage in my life, at this level of having established myself. I don't really like the idea of sitting myself in a chair to be scrutinized by some government worker because somebody else wants me to read a document that probably is just a bunch of information we gave them in the first place. Fuck you. I'm not playing that game. But I guess it's to say, like, they didn't trick him into doing something he didn't need to do. That's probably a part of the process of having that job.
Chat is asking us to do a live episode next year where we all take a poly test live out here.
We all fail, right?
Yeah,
100%.
no way.
I want to shift
By the way,
gears to another.
don't forget one thing, that probably Snowden, Hal Martin, and Reality Winner, they all passed the
They all
polygraph.
passed their polys. I'm sure they passed their poly, or they found ways to kind of game their way around the poly, and that's really the problem with the poly. Polygraphs have become like a political, like internal bureaucracy, sadomasochistic office politics type thing, where like people know how to game the polys, how to not be like, I won't be in the room for this thing, or like if I say this half truth that's kind of adjacent to this thing, then I'm not really lying. Like there's ways that you can kind of manage it. And obviously it has not weeded out any of the assholes like what Joshua Schulte from the CIA or Edward Snowden, or all kinds of people that have more than subverted stuff within these hollowed halls.
One more tiny story that, to me, passed under the radar was the US FCC banning the sale of foreign drones in the US, including all DJI drones, which are like all those off-the-shelf drones. Completely banned the sale of all new foreign-made drones and components on the ground of national security. It has been years and years of debate around banning DJI and what DJI is up to, but it's never been a thing. It's actually been, they passed the banning here. TP-Link. We've had the experience with Kaspersky and these foreign companies being banned here. Do you feel like this is passing on that whole political thing? Or is there a conspiracy Ryan had to be warned that says, hey, maybe someone has seen something that these things can be activated, can be updated remotely, can be taken control of, that presents a real national security risk? Is this politics or is this real? Any thoughts?
I think it's both. Without, and like, I mean, you're kind of hitting me with this one as a bit of a surprise. Surprise, not surprise, right? But essentially, um, there has been interesting research that has essentially shown in the past that, like, for example, DJI drones were collecting geolocation stuff and transmitting it to parts in China, and like doing shit that's just like deeply uncomfortable. Like, you're basically the consumer swarm of drones is effectively a a globally distributed sensor network for the PRC, uh, and it has all the abilities you'd want for like GPS or satellite imagery style reconnaissance in a very interesting way. Um, and that kind of stuff has been documented. People have extracted certain kinds of lists and certain types of things that were being picked up by DJI drones. But my understanding is that that's something that like we've known for a while, like many, many years. So it's not like unsubstantiated that there are things to worry about with DJI and these drones. But then, the fact that it's happening now is definitely part of the politics, and not a small thing. Like, DJI is not a small company in China. It is one of these like miracle state champions that has, just completely created and dominated an industry globally for which there's very little, meaningful competition. So fucking with DJI is definitely fucking with, like, putting your hand deep in the pocket of the PRC. And at the same time, I would question the wisdom of it, not from a national security standpoint. I think from a national security standpoint, it makes perfect sense. But from a supply chain standpoint, my question then becomes, okay, who, what, where is stepping in to replace this? Like, you're just gonna take away the ability to have like the most ubiquitous type of commercial drone that people can buy. So what are they gonna do now, right? Oh, Ryan, we can't hear you. You muted?
I feel like
There.
drones get the hackles up because of what's going on in the conflict: Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Iran. We've had extensive use, like documented use of drones in modern warfare. And the idea that the Chinese can have millions, perhaps billions of these things scattered in every household in the United States, does that make anyone nervous? Is that something that makes you nervous, Costin? You're closer to the action in Romania.
It's a bit tough because I was just reading that DJI accounts for 90% of the drones sold worldwide. So that's huge in my opinion.
And they have to be updated remotely, constantly.
Yeah. True. That as well. But also, I was reading actually the FCC press release, and they do ban the sale of new foreign drones. So that means that the old ones can still operate. And actually, as far as I can see, what they're saying here, they're actually not gonna certify these components and the drones. So the FCC will not cert. So the question is, can you still buy them uncertified, something like that? Can they still fly legally-ish? I don't know. Will you have maybe websites where you can buy them as a contraband, bring them from Cuba, Venezuela, whatever, if they are cheaper than alternatives, and just fly them like that? It's a question. I don't know.
So I have never owned a drone. I've been curious, but honestly, every time I think about getting one, apart from the fact that it's one of those vanity things that I have literally no use for whatsoever,
You can
I've
take it up when you're
also-
running your marathon. You can have it
Right,
track
right,
you
when I'm-
running your
you know,
marathon and
my-
1,000 laps around an Olympic
So-
stadium.
Yeah, so
And
that
you're
it
coding.
can prove to people that I actually am outside and running. No, I the thing that really holds me back is hearing from people that you have all these rules around like clearance and where you can fly these planes, these drones, and like apparently they're decently serious about it, especially near airports and certain kinds of areas. And my understanding is living in DC that it's basically like a no-fly zone. I've never looked into that too hard because, like I said, it's not something like those sorts of drones aren't the ones that really do it for me. I'm more interested in the kind of things that can be useful around the house. But you know,
Does that include, by the way, robot vacuum cleaners like the Roomba? Because
well,
like DJI also they make vacuum cleaners.
yes. Well, I actually spent quite a while trying to figure out what the right solution there would be, and Tom Hagel actually turned me on to the Matic robot, which like both vacuums and mops, which for a person like myself is quite a godsend. So that's
Hire
the
a
one
human.
I've got.
What's wrong with hiring a human to come?
Look,
you know
I
what
gotta
I
be
mean?
honest with you, dude. I'll be completely honest with you. I have not been able to find a human worth their salt to come clean my house. I've tried probably like 17 services since I moved to DC.
All this moving to robots, man.
I would love to pay some people, and if I could find reliable, trustworthy people, I would happily overpay them for the convenience factor. It's not like I'm dying to have like a robot. This thing does two things. I have a million fucking tasks I wish could be taken care of in this house, and I'm more than happy to pay people fair wages to do them, but I can't find them. And honestly, I wonder how much of a, like, I don't want to over expand that into too much commentary, but that is kind of an interesting sort of microcosmic representation of what's happening in America, right? Like you have these things that are proven that have like cratered the economic incentives to provide certain kinds of more complete services at a quality level. And yet those things are kind of like one trick ponies that you pay for and you don't really get the same kind of value. And you know, maybe robotics will change that in the next couple of years with some of this crazy shit like those 1X robots that are going to come carry your groceries and shit. But for now, they just don't. Like even if we bought like a dear friend offered me a Unitree bipedal robot to walk around the house.
Yeah.
No,
the humanoid,
the humanoid ones, like the Rizbots. And I mean, I think it's cool. Like I'm not gonna say no, but like looking at it, I'm like, I don't know that there's much like practical I can do with this. I might tie like a taser to it and just have it walk around the house at night, you know, in case anyone gets any ideas, but it's not gonna do anything practical.
Yeah, the whole drone thing gets the hair and the nape of my neck up because of I think the implications of it for national security. And I have one of these things. I fly it when I go mountain biking or I go hiking
You
and
see?
so on.
Whose side are you on, bro?
It's so strictly ring fenced though, because like I live near an airport and you can't even fly it. It wouldn't go above maybe 30 feet.
Right.
You need the Russian firmware for it.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Then you can put a grenade on it, right?
Right. But the idea that the Chinese have the ability to update this, it requires updating every now and then. The firmware needs updating. To update this to get around that ring fence scares me. And that's the reason why, as Conspiracy Ryan, I take the battery out at night. You know?
Are you really?
Wow.
Wow. I mean,
I take the batteries out at night. I don't want to wake up to some flicking things flying around my house.
I'm not judging you. But it's also kind of like hilarious, right? But I get it. Like what was the movie that I brought this up before? Was it Leave the World Behind, the movie that like
Yes.
Obama had like kind of helped produce? It was look, I'm glad I watched it. It was a fucking downer of a movie. So it's kind of like, it's really hard to recommend to people because it's like, would you like to ruin your day? Like, would you like to have a terrible day? You should go watch this movie. It's a great way to ruin your day. But what was interesting about it was it was kind of that premise. It's like there's some kind of unattributed war, and what you see is things like all of our Tesla cars being used to like fucking uh, as projectiles, essentially like
It's
ramming
not
all of the
crazy.
highways and the roads.
It
Like,
is
no,
not
no,
crazy.
it is not crazy at all. And stuff like that, right? And like not being able to access the television or the internet or power and like all these things. You go, yeah, yep, and you know, then yes, the Chinese own and control all of that stuff and produce all of it for us, and you know,
Somebody IM'd me on Christmas Day to say, I can't believe Juanito recommended the Diddy documentary for me on the podcast.
a what?
No. You were just recommending things in your book club and your things to watch club. You recommended the Diddy documentary to the
Oh
audience.
yeah, hell yeah, yeah. No, nobody hates like 50 Cent hates, and I'm here for it. I am completely here for it.
Before we get to our year-end award, I want to touch on
by the
one
way,
small.
Before
Yes, go.
there's another very interesting movie which I can recommend about polygraphs, which is called Black Bag. In case you've seen it,
Black Bag?
Black Bag. Yeah, it's a spy movie about like people not trusting each other and finding whoever is the traitor among us. So it's a very cool movie. It's highly recommended on my side.
There used to be a
Ryan,
TV
don't-
show. There used to
with
be a
people-
TV show.
People failing polygraphs.
Ryan, stop rushing, bro. We have like 4 hours today, right?
not
Today's
doing
the
4
4-hour
hours.
episode. You said you guys are gonna take pee breaks. Kostan's
Or
got his bottle.
diapers. Yeah.
Dude, I just don't drink it. I haven't drank water probably in a few weeks, so I'm ready. Like I'm fine. I'll hold out.
What are you drinking?
The other
Coffee and Coke Zero, bro. That's
Not water. That's a proper answer.
it. Yeah, not water.
The other story making the rounds, not necessarily a story, but a discussion point I saw on LinkedIn and Twitter is a Microsoft distinguished engineer called Galen Hunt posting a LinkedIn message saying, listen, I have an open position for an IC5 principal software engineer on my team. The person is in person and in Redmond. And here's the nut graph. My goal is to eliminate every line of C and C++ from Microsoft by 2030. The strategy is to combine AI and algorithms to rewrite Microsoft's largest code bases. So now this obviously set off discussion point. Microsoft is using AI to rewrite everything and get rid of C, C++. And then Galen publishes an update saying, whoa. It appears my post generated far more attention than I intended. And just to clarify, Windows is not being rewritten in Rust with AI. So Kostin, Windows is being rewritten in Rust with AI, right?
He's totally rewriting Windows in Rust with AI, I guess.
He calls it a research project, but this obviously, shot up into people's notices because of, AI rewriting things. Right in the wheelhouse of the topics we discussed. Is this a realistic thing where companies can...
Well, I think if you ask me, the premise is wrong. Just automatically saying that C and C++ is bad, I think that's a wrong take. I mean, as we have seen from the recent Cloudflare outage, even Rust code can crash. Like, if you write poor code, if you are AI or again whatever you're doing there, like writes bad Rust code or Golang or JavaScript or Java or whatever, the result will be the same. It doesn't necessarily mean that will be better. And especially when you do it with AI and you don't have humans to look at the results after another AI has, like Aardvark, has checked the output and made sure that it's safe and it doesn't crash and it doesn't have hidden functionalities introduced by AI hallucinating or being trained on Chinese repositories or whatever. Even after that, you cannot be 100% safe. So if you ask me, maybe it's better to start writing new things from scratch as opposed to rewrite things that were solid and they've been running for a very long time with AI in something else.
I have really strong thoughts and feelings about this, but I want to address it on a couple of levels, which is, first of all, I agree with Kostin. I think this is internalizing some of this like shitty sycophantic advice we've been getting around, like, oh, if only we rewrote everything in Rust, everything would be perfect. And it's like, yeah, Fuck off.
No.
Like, yeah, I get it. You like Rust. It's really just Nazi C, like C++, right? Like it's just it's a fascist C++. It's just we could never get you assholes to decide on some convention, so somebody created an opinionated C++ and made it through macros, and now you idiots will finally follow the same rules, whether they're good or not. We at least have a standard because somebody forced you to use a style guide because it won't fucking compile unless you do it the way it tells you to do it, and it's going to do it using macros that you don't see. But for those of us that have tried to reverse engineer Rust, it's just the same shit under the hood. It's literally going through LLVM and being fucking vomited out into a monstrosity of like the same C++ shit that you people, seem to be disparaging. So clearly, there's not a very deep understanding going into that. That said, this is also one of the most important problems of the AI space as we know it right now, which is something that I call like, I want to emphasize the value of the term transpilation. And I kind of started writing about transpilation, right? Like when you transpile something, you basically take it from one language and recreate it in another language, right? So if I brought you a bunch of JavaScript code and we decided we wanted to make it Python code, we would transpile it into Python code. And it's an important and interesting problem to say, how reliably can we automate the transpilation of code from one language to another? I actually think that the more interesting problem is, to what degree can our existing LLM-based coding solutions do black box transpilation, which is to say, I see what this thing does, I can test its effects and outputs, can I recreate it to within a certain degree of certainty, even though I've never seen the source code? And that's an important problem when you think about reverse engineering, because it's a very similar process that we're doing. So I've thought a lot about this. I've just never written it down. But I can see why this is a thing that needs to be solved. I just hope that it's being solved with a little bit more intellectual sophistication than just the CISA bullshit of like, oh, if we just wrote everything in Rust, everything's going to be perfect. It's like, yeah, fuck off.
I think transpilation is what pops up in Galen Hunt's update, where he says the team's project is a research project. We are building technology to make migration from language to language possible. The intent of the post was to find like-minded engineers to join us on this next stage of blah, 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 blah. Not to set a new strategy for Windows 11 Plus or to imply that Rust is an endpoint, but the idea that there needs to be some sort of underlying tech for migration from language to language possible is the explanation. I can imagine the conversations in Microsoft after the initial post with like a date by 2030. Can you imagine the internal conversations about, dude, what the fuck are you posting on LinkedIn?
You're putting your OKRs out on LinkedIn. I was like,
Are we willing to bet that the initial post was written with AI? Like,
100%.
help me write a powerful LinkedIn post about me improving security of C and translating it to Rust.
Yeah, but isn't that what everyone is doing though? I mean, you can just spot this slop everywhere. LinkedIn is just a cesspool, but everywhere else, every press release, you can pinpoint at things that are being written. And is that a bad thing? Isn't it a lot better than some human writing?
You are the victim of your own success.
I suppose.
I think the problem really is that it's coming to my eyes unfiltered. Like, that's something that we started to discuss, I think last episode or 2 episodes ago, when we were talking about AI browsers. And it's like, the only reason AI browsers are like such a disgusting thing right now is just that they're not good. But the minute they get good, you're talking about an appropriate filtering mechanism for what is already an internet full of slop and shit that, like, if no human being took the time to like filter and curate the thing that's being put in front of me, why should I ingest it raw? Why should I raw dog the internet when it's been created by machines, instead of having my own AI filter it and change it and explain it to me, and in a world of quality personalization, have it essentially meet me to the degree of my incompetence, right? Like if it knows that I suck at math and this thing has parts of it that are about advanced math, how about you fucking give me this like Eli 5 next to it of like, oh, don't panic, bro. This is what that math means. That would actually be like let my brain relax into just trying to get the distilled insight of what's in this information rather than it having to be like a giant intellectual exercise to read a bunch of garbage just trying to figure out what it is that's actually valuable in it and then what it is that I don't know that I need to know in order to understand it.
And the other thing is we are kind of at least to me, we're in a place where we're not expecting hallucinations. And these things are still hallucinating a lot. 5.2 for me is a step backwards in hallucinations. I feed it basic things that I know the answer to and they're wrong, confidently wrong, amazingly confidently wrong. And I feel like as a whole, society has accepted hallucination has been fixed, and it hasn't been fixed.
I think, Ryan, that's a really good point. And frankly, I think it just brings us right back to an adjacency to the point I was just making about browsers, right? If the solution for navigating an internet that is largely composed of AI slop is to have an AI filtering browser that's personalized, then I think there's like a similar circumstance in what you're describing, where there's a reason the people who actually know how to use these things are obsessed with evals, because they need verification loops in order to tell whether the thing actually works or doesn't work, or like, oh, you tweak the model and it used to give me 98% accuracy yesterday. Today it gives me 87% accuracy. Tomorrow it gives me 23% accuracy. What the fuck happened? And the only way you know that is by having this fancy MLOps pipeline. And that's why like you hear me constantly plugging Dreadnode's Strikes platform, mostly because I'm so impressed with being able to like get a verification pipeline out of, an MLOps pipeline out of the box. But my point is really that you and me and most people that are using it for research, that are using it for day-to-day activities, summarizing, whatever, we don't use it through the filter of an MLOps pipeline or anything that has evals or verification in it. And your intuitions are correct. Like when I talk to people about what they're building, I had the same kind of shock reaction. I was literally talking to somebody yesterday who was building a threat intel pipeline, processing threat intel reports into like attack paths. And I was like, so what have you learned? And it's like, oh, you absolutely have to run the summarization processes multiple times so that you don't miss things that haven't, that aren't being distilled properly, or you have to use multiple models in this or that way because you need one to verify the other that it's actually pulling stuff out. And to be fully frank, I think the cost of infrastructure and the cost of tokens and the vagueness of the output means that like we're all being done a disservice, because most of the time they're trying to give us the cheapest, shittiest version of their product, hoping that we can't tell that it's not that good. And if there's one thing that's going to cripple all of the work the frontier labs are doing going forward, it's going to be a lack of reliability and rigor as to the product that they're selling us. Because we can't do it, a good friend said to me, you can't do science outside of the frontier labs. And sadly, I think that he's right, not because other places don't have resources, but because if I want to be doing science with the latest, greatest state-of-the-art models without somebody having the ability to fuck around with my variables without me noticing, then I need to work there. Otherwise, I have no fucking clue. If today somebody changed the temperature, tomorrow they use a different model, they fine-tuned it for this thing, the RLHF had some problem, there's not a lot of infrastructure available today because Sam Altman wants everybody to make dumbass fucking videos. So now, you know, the thing that we were using for cancer research
is no bullshit.
Yeah, is no longer like, so there's not as much compute available, or like, you know, and not to come down on OpenAI. I mean, like the same with Anthropic and like no, because I don't want to come down on OpenAI at all, because I can come down on Anthropic doing like the model degradation thing with Claude Code for weeks, which actually fucked me over. It fucked projects that I was working on. Again, my fault for not having a proper MLOps pipeline, but also for being a naive consumer who thought they could trust their provider. And that's my big point. As we start to get,
this is our future, though, right? This is our future.
As we start to get into 2026, and people are getting a lot more antsy about AI needing to prove its economic value and its ROI, and like, all right, you told us this shit was going to change the world. Where the fuck is it? This is going to be the absolute Achilles heel of the frontier labs unless they figure out how to get honest and reliable, so that people who don't work there can build things knowing that they will be able to have the same results they had on Monday when they come back to the office on Wednesday. If you can't do that, then we're fucked. Like, there's no way any of the frontier labs are going to be able to generate that impact. It's going to come from people self-hosting open source models that they know they can control the parameters for. And, you know, reliability in a stochastic system is much more important than cutting edge capabilities if it's unreliable.
Costin, are you running into hallucination and some quality issues lately? And I mean, if this is our future, like, how do we standardize on this is what we have to force to live with?
Well, maybe I'm like a late bloomer, late fanger, like they say in in some movies. But I've started using models in parallel. So nowadays, whenever I need to solve something, I send the same query to 3-4 different models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, Super Grok, whatever, and take whatever answer looks the best. And I think nowadays it's probably the only way, because if you rely just on one model alone, you are most likely to run into some issues, including like censoring of the output.
That's what I was going to ask. Wokeness,
denials, right? Like we call it wokeness, exactly. So depending on what kind of questions you ask, you will run into things like, I can't really help you do that. I'll give you a random example. Today, there's two pretzel stores in Romania. One is called Matei and one is called Luca, which are like famous disciples of Jesus, whatever their names in English are.
Matthew
like,
and
Matthew
Luke.
And Luke, I guess. Matthew and Luke. And we were like, I vaguely remember that one of them was highly educated and the other one was not that highly educated. And we asked one of the models, my wife asked actually, which one was the smartest, Matthew or Luke? And you know the answer, right? Like, it's a matter of relative perception, which something that depends on how you interpret.
It is, though.
In the end, Luke was a doctor. Like, Luke was a doctor, and Matthew was a customs control agent, something like that. So he was like a customs control, border control, however you want to call it, like a border control agent. So that aside, it's interesting how that influenced their writing styles. That Luke, being a doctor, he was like more thorough. Maybe he wrote like a lot uglier. I don't know. Like doctors in Romania, whenever they write you a prescription, it's encoded, ciphered somehow, like nobody can read that. So you need to go to the pharmacy, and together with the pharmacist, you try to decipher what does it say here. Like what kind of problem do you have? Maybe it's this medicine. Maybe. But yeah, you run into these sorts of issues a lot, and I think that you need to use several models in parallel. And even like
that's
that,
not only
even like
for
that.
That's not only to cover against hallucinations, but for the balkanization aspect of it, the nation state type balkanization,
Oh
where you
yeah.
go to the Chinese things to get some insight into things that our quote unquote woke models aren't providing. Is that a real thing?
For me, it is in the sense that, like I said, I'm starting to use models in parallels a lot more, and I was even like fancying the idea. I mean, if people would like it, just to ask tough questions, like really tricky, tough questions to all the models, and just we publish the answers, and people decide, in their opinion, which model answers the best and which one is like hush hush, can't really help you with that kind of an answer. But again, based on my recent experience, the worst thing is that you can't rely on something alone, and the changes from one version to another are too disturbing. Like there's two big differences. Like one model version, like you said, 5.0 was bad, 5.1 was super good, 5.2 is not so good again. Or like take any model out there, and you'll have probably similar experiences. So
It's part of the
tricky.
honestly, it's literally part of the best practice research to have critique loops. And this is something that I'm actually really interested in, but also very frustrated about when it comes to my use of LLMs, because clearly I need to find time to sit around and instrument a pipeline in order to have, Gemini do deep research and Claude critique it, and then something synthesize it, and then something summarize it for me. And that's it's a really standard thing that I should be able to do, but it isn't something that's very readily accommodated by any tools, any consumer tools that I'm aware of. But everybody does it. It's just that you got to go write your own fucking code for it, and you got to go figure out LangChain or whatever the hell. And that's very frustrating for me because I haven't had the time to do it, but I really want to figure it out precisely because of what you guys are talking about. But I'll actually say that I don't think of this as a balkanization problem. I don't think that it's that people are skewing the models towards their own particular preferences beyond whatever RLHF does to try to humanize these things, and probably overshoots it, as Ilya was saying. But actually, I think it's a problem with the training data opaqueness. I think that's all it is. It's just we don't know what's in the training sets for these models and what gets emphasized at the end of the day. So it's a mystery to us that they'll perform really well in writing medieval history reviews because it saw a shit ton of that, but it's very bad at like figuring out how to do actuarial and financial practices because it never got exposed to that information. And like that's only difficult because we don't know what's in the training sets. And the hedge against these things seems to be just take a bunch of different models and just throw them at the same problem and throw them at each other's output until something synthesizes, because you don't know which one has greater coverage, or what a better reasoning activation loop is than saying, hey, research this thing, and then calling a different model and say, hey, critique this thing like you fucking hate it and tell me what's wrong with it, and then have a third model go judge the content of both and synthesize an answer. But like the issue is really that we're selling people on the most basic version of using AI, which is running a single one-shot LLM interaction and getting a single answer that you hope to God is very, very accurate, instead of selling people more of like a compound molecule as like the unitary, the single quanta of reasoning, wherein without us seeing anything, there's like a multi-agent loop of multi-model, multi-agent loop of things, trying a thing, critiquing a thing, evaluating a thing, synthesizing a thing, and then I don't see any of that shit. All I get is the output and just go, oh wow, how accurate this shit is.
So the future is we'll pay for a service to send all the prompts to everywhere else. And so we'll pay for the service on top of it. Like, I mean, that's where the natural progression is, that you'll need an AI to do this AI thing for you.
What you need is for a company like Dreadnought to decide that their identity is going to be giving people reliable consumer grade AI, and that the nerds will stop treating every human being on Earth as if they are an ML ops engineer, and thinking that the value of AI is so self-evident to every human being because it's so readily accessible to every person who lives in San Francisco, that they don't need to create any step-down transformer technologies. What we need is for MLOps pipelines to become a standardized thing, and then for it to exist transparently somewhere I don't even see, because a service that tells me that it's doing deep research, or tells me that it's doing, synthesizing of whatever, or tells me that it's going to read the news for me, whatever the fuck it is it's telling me that it's going to do, it's standard practice that it is having some kind of like dual adversarial setup of models and grounding in search, and not cheaping out on Google search API shit, and like doing all of that stuff, and then giving me the output. So I don't read some half-baked, half-step bullshit from your GPT-4o garbage that you didn't have to pay a fraction of a cent for because it fucking sucks.
You know, it's exactly a year ago, 2 weeks ago, exactly 1 year since we heard from the Chinese with DeepSeek. And you remember how much that set off a big, giant conversation in national security circles about distillation and copying and stealing and all this stuff, right? And we haven't heard from them in a year. And I remember a year ago, this time, we were just like, wow, right? And I can't shake the feeling that there must be some other wow factors down the road that the Chinese have had for the last year that we haven't heard from them. Is there anything there around? Again, coming back to the balkanization conversations around what we're expecting out of China, and then tying it into the U.S. government recently removing all the controls around shipping the advanced chips to China and advanced NVIDIA chips to China. So, look, what have we heard from China in the last year, and what are you like me, just kind of like?
I'm fascinated. It's a very weird inversion for me as an American and a truly enthusiastic American, to look to the East with so much interest and kind of curiosity as to like what they've technologically figured out. But Ryan, I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but like for my roundup of the year, like the DeepSeek paper was one of the big things I wanted to talk about, and then the semi-analysis.
It was December 2024.
I know. Well, actually,
he's cheating. It's okay. You're allowed to cheat.
No, it wasn't in 2024.
It's an awards show, bro. It's a fake awards show. Nobody cares.
No, but sorry, the paper dropped in ArcSiv in January with the semi-analysis post from Dylan Patel analyzing it.
Fair
So,
enough.
Fuck you guys. The other
I was going to
story
put
I wanted to
DeepSeek
talk
on my
about is
list,
in
and then I
December
was
2024.
Yeah, I was going to put DeepSeek on the list as one of like the most groundbreaking things this year, and then I realized, fuck, it was last year. So
well, so I did it for you, but so we can talk about that. But more to the heart of your question, are there more things? There absolutely are, and there's a couple of them that come to mind immediately. Some of them apocryphal. All of them apocryphal, but really the things that I would point out is, first of all, it's becoming readily clear to what extent the diffusion of certain types of AI in China is just vastly superior to create societal benefits. So, a good friend of mine was telling me about his mom's trip to China and going through one of these like massively long bridges, I think in like Chongqing or somewhere. Sorry, I butchered that. But and then literally you have this combination of this surveillance state and everybody being so comfortable with pervasive monitoring, and vision models and different types of services all integrated to the point where this woman could go on a road trip, place an order in the same app for food, and by the time because they know how far on the bridge you are, by the time you get to the rest stop, somebody is outside holding your bag of food that you can just grab and keep driving because they just know, they literally know where you are. And there's something to be said for the level of like convenience factor that the Chinese have managed to bake into the wide deployment of these surveillance capabilities. Like for us, it's just atrocious and horrifying to think that you're being monitored in this way, that there's such pervasive state control and knowledge of everything. But from the consumer standpoint, there is definitely oh, holy shit, this just works, right? Like the Apple promise of, well, I didn't have to go sit there forever and ever waiting miserably in an unoptimized line full of imbeciles. No, the thing is just smoothly done. And I say that because as we see, sorry, that was a very long-winded way of saying, as we see vision models being open sourced from China, what we see is that they are fucking excellent. And they're being readily provided like they're not worth anything, right? Like they're just being thrown out there, kind of like, oh yeah, this is already like a solved problem in China. And you go, holy shit, like I can run a vision model at home that can identify people and packages and license plates of anything that drives by my house and everything, because this is like a solved problem. And the other one, and I know this is a very long-winded answer, but shout out to Brandon Dixon
I was
who
going to say
pointed this
episode
out to me.
57. I just
Bro,
looked it up. As you were
Brandon-
talking, I looked up. Episode 57, Brandon Dixon has been kind of like putting us on to like
Brandon
pay
Dixon
attention
was
here.
on
There.
it.
Go ahead.
Dude, he was on it, and something he said back then, and I didn't know what to think of, was like, oh my God, have you tried Kimmy K2? I mean, it's fucking phenomenal. I was like, the fuck is Kimmy K2? At the time, I was still stuck on like Quen, like QWQ, and like these new reasoning things. And it didn't even occur to me to look at this Kimmy K2, and I have to admit, I still haven't tested it. But Kimmy K2 thinking is a trillion parameter model. It is a monstrosity. It's huge. And it does this kind of like mixture of experts type, like, I don't know what you call it, activation, where like it kind of loads 32 billion parameters at a time out of a total 1 trillion parameters. And it's supposed to be phenomenal, like GPT-5++ type performance from an open source model. It's just that you need you need to invest in some fucking hardware to run it, but it's not inaccessible. It's hardware that I could run in my house if I was willing to burn the money. And that's my way of really, really long-windedly answering your question, Ryan, of like, these are just like tips of icebergs that are readily visible to us and completely approachable. Like you can go and download them and use them yourself out of a Chinese ecosystem that is surely got some fucking deep secrets and pearls that are just way out of the grasp of what we are thinking about with AI.
Where does someone go to learn about this stuff, to be at like a Brandon level, to understand what's coming out of China, what's coming out of Europe? Where's Mistral? Like, what are some of these little nitty-gritty tools that he mentioned? Where do you hang out to get that? Is it a Reddit group? Is there a private group? Is there a Dreadnought?
There's all sorts of interesting forums, and yeah, there's groups and folks. Like there's a few luminaries and people that I go to. Like anything Rob Gilduda says is I'll take that to the bank on these things. But
it's trawling
more
research
so,
papers too, right? Like just
part of it is trolling research papers. Part of it is the rumor mill. Part is like just living in San Francisco. You just kind of have to be there and hear what everybody's saying, or presumably parts of China. But I think there is like a clear answer as far as we're concerned. Dylan Patel's Substack semi-analysis is probably the most valuable Substack subscription anybody can spend money on. And it is money. It's like $500 a month or something. It's like, I think it's like
written
really
by humans.
Yeah, it's written by humans who have fucking nailed supply chain analysis around AI stuff. So like they're the ones like when you see me what I posted about the DeepSeek paper that I was going to bring up, it was the DeepSeek paper which is obviously touting the brilliance of this distillation process that they developed and the Dylan Patel semi-analysis cost analysis that went into the saying, haha, fuck you, this cost you $6 million. That was $6 million for the final run. You have actually invested $1.6 billion into all this hardware, all these people, training, GPU, like all this shit. And that is like, for a fucking Substack, it is like, I think some of the premier thinking on, you know, economic and financial and physical and logistical analysis of the realities of what's happening in the AI space. And I think it's worth every fucking penny.
I think it's fascinating. I'm just curious, like when Brandon Dixon came on stage there with us on the live podcast at Black Hat and started dropping, oh yeah, pay attention to what the Chinese are doing here and around here and this tool and that tool, and I'm like, where are you learning this stuff? Like I'm online, I'm chronically online looking around for this stuff and I'm not learning from it. Maybe it's its access at Microsoft, but you're right, you have to be in kind of San Francisco and in the circles of hanging out and learning about these things.
I think it's also part of, you know, I mentioned MLOps pipelines and I was kind of like ranting about that, and I'm sure that sounds really niche. But the truth is that there is a haves and have-nots to AI. Anybody who's just using AI, using the front ends of products like ChatGPT and Claude, like including myself, you are a have-not. Like we might have like an intuitive grasp that is more refined than that of the average person who just uses like whatever shitty chatbot model and doesn't understand whether it's working or not. But we are not playing at the league of people who have had to build reliable, deterministically reliable systems that include non-deterministic stochastic components like LLMs within a desired parameter of success, which is to say, right, the models are going to output a different answer. You never know what the answer really is going to be, but I'm building a product that has to be reliable. So how do I wrangle this beast and harness it and test it and make sure that I have a reliable output within 98% of cases? This system is going to output an acceptable answer such that I can deploy it. The people who have to build that shit, the people who are harnessing these beasts to be able to have them perform up to a reliable standard, are the ones who understand all this shit, because they're in the background playing with like, well, this model does this with this settings and these weights and this top K and this, you know, if I change the temperature and if I put it this way and if it has 5 tools, it does better. But if it has 3 tools, it does worse. But if it has a summary of the tools, it does better. Like it's all this fucking Lego block, you know, neurotic bullshit that you have to do to make that thing work reliably. Those are the AI haves. The rest of us are have-nots. Oh, we can't hear you, Ryan.
A very small minority. There's people doing yard work across my neighbors, doing yard work with a ton of noise. I'm trying to not have it bleed into the call. Anyway, we have had the people waiting for an hour and 15 minutes and we haven't gotten to the annual awards show.
There's people here?
By the way, this is a fake awards show. Don't take any of this stuff seriously.
We didn't even get paid for these awards.
We don't get paid for these awards. There were no nominations and there will be no protests.
Prizes.
No prizes, no redraws, no apologies.
Speeches.
The prizes are our speeches. And this is just a segment we're going to do just to call out the most interesting research stories and discoveries that we've been tracking over the course of the year. It doesn't have to be a research discovery. It could be anything. The thing that stayed in your brain throughout the course of this year and what it means moving forward. And it's a chance for us to give shout outs to people who did amazing research work. Listen, there's a lot of people doing, I was looking at this thing and there's so many APT research, threat intel companies doing fascinating research. Some good, some bad, a lot of marketing bullshit, some with IOX, some without IOX. But hey, it's people looking and providing some level of visibility for the rest of us. And when I get to my list, I'll mention one of them. Juanito, you want to say something?
I was going to ask if this is the right moment for your first pee break. So before
I'm good. I'm doing good. I'm only
sure?
one
You
cup
guys
of
Tell
coffee.
you a communist
You all right?
Romania story during your pee break if you want.
Yeah,
Do it.
Go. Give me the communist Romania
All right,
story
go.
before we start.
So back in the days, there were like certain a type of people, like you could recognize them everywhere. So every Sunday, man would just go outside the block, apartment building where they were living, and they start fiddling with their cars, with their Dacia cars. I don't know, like do something in there, like polish, like a small thingy, put a bit of oil, like tighten a screw, replace something, put a bit of duct tape on a component. So like everywhere across the country, like everywhere, men would just go in front of the block and they start doing things with their cars. Why? Because if you don't do this, then your car starts having problems. So this is a kind of a maintenance procedure, whatever you want to call it, ritual. It's a ritual that you need to perform every Sunday, like like going to the church, like a sermon, if you want, that you need in order to keep the car running. And I was like not one of those guys. So every now and then my car would have issues, and like one of those guys would just walk to me, like listen to the sound of the engine and say like, the whatever Giglor is stuck. So you need to blow it. Like you need to take it out of there, to blow air through it, and then you put it back and it starts working. And I was like, my only dream back then was to own a car that just works, a car that you don't have to sermon and bless and drip every Sunday. And after a while, we got modern cars and the car started working, like with injection, like intercooler, whatever. And the cars, like, they would just work. And I feel it's the same with AI nowadays. Like, if you don't, every Sunday you go there and you start like fine-tuning the parameters with the Lego and building and adding some the things on top of it. So like the temperature, like 0.8179, because 0.8176 doesn't work.
Dude,
all I want nowadays is an AI that just works, It's like
you want the iPhone of AIs.
I want the Audi of AIs. Like it just works. You don't have to like every Sunday.
Honestly, that's the reality
the parameters
of what's missing here. That's really you're really hitting the nail on the head of it's crazy that we are having entire discussions about whether there is actual value in the greatest technological discovery of the past however many years, because people are like, yeah, but it's not diffusing into the economy. And I go, yes, you're absolutely correct, but that is actually not to do with the value of the technology itself. It's the fact that like nobody is investing into companies that act as step down transformers, because you have this promise that the AI is going to get so smart that it's going to sell itself. So you're an idiot if you even try to make a company that leverages AI in a reliable way, and everyone's sitting around going like, yo, these chatbots suck ass, like they're fucking terrible. And it's okay, man. As soon as God emerges from the machine, this thing is going to fix itself. It's like, okay, well, how much you guys want? 20 billion a year? Let's go, right? Like it's just they're keeping the natural order from coming. And I'm guessing what we need to happen, I wish it didn't have to come to this, but I'm guessing what needs to happen is this huge investment reckoning has to come. And we have this dot-com bubble style explosion. And then people suddenly start to get a little more sensible after like 6 months when they've licked their wounds. Then the VCs suddenly go, oh shit, maybe we should invest into this like 6-person team who knows how to use AI and is interested in creating an application that has a specific TAM and a specific, consumer category of people who have money and need something. And you go, wow, what a novel fucking approach. I cannot wait to give you an award, right?
Costin, can you give out our first set of awards?
Look, there's like I said, there's no awards. There's just stories which I think that were outstanding for one reason or another. And while there's been a lot of research published this
Incredible
year,
work all year, yeah.
incredible work from a lot of teams out there, like all of us, all of them, like good friends of ours, and for sure we will forget some of them. So if you don't hear your names here, it doesn't mean that you didn't do outstanding work.
We'll catch you in the next episode as well.
Absolutely, and I think that we can also try to publish longer lists of what time allows us to talk about. So for sure, one of the stories which I think it was one of the most surprising stories this year, because when everybody lost hope, like all hope was lost, and then this story dropped. And for me, it was kind of special because you would see a lot of things out there, such as CVE 2025, whatever was used in the wild, was like extremely targeted against a limited number of people, no IOX. Or like, here's the root cause of CVE 2025, blah, 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 which is an amazing blog with a lot of research, but there's like no IOX. So like, what can I do? How do I know if I've been targeted? You can't know. Well, Apple will notify you, except for some people that Apple won't notify because, I don't know, they're on Android. And those people won't get the notification from Apple.
Fuck those people.
Fuck those people. So to me, it was like a beam of light. When I saw this story, I said, wow, there is hope. There is hope on the internet, There's hope for the IOC children. And this story is the Palo Alto Unit 42 landfall research. Unfortunately, Unit 42, they don't say exactly who was involved in there. I suspect, or I kind of know, that our friend Itai Cohen was one of the authors. And I thought this was an amazing piece of research talking about this new commercial grade spyware that they call LANDFALL. And the most amazing thing about it, in my opinion, was that it was sitting on VirusTotal for anyone to find. So anyone could have found it if they knew what to search for, if they paid enough attention. And this is essentially a piece of technology that got dropped through zerodays on Samsung phones, through a very interesting mechanism with interesting code names in there, like Bridgehead, that they speculated could be some kind of a artifact from their previous jobs or from the army times or whatever. So I thought this was like really one of those amazing pieces of research that shows that it's possible. Yes, you can write about interesting things with IOCs. You can have, let's say, interesting stories that help the other researchers, like extends a hand out there, and it gives you the chance it gives a chance to others to do a bit of additional research on their own, as opposed to, showing we closed the bug, move along, nothing to see here. And like, what about myself? Yeah, what about yourself? Nothing.
We have overlap because I have LANDFALL on my list for another reason, which is partially for the reason that you mentioned, is that it was undetected for so long. And my question to you is, why did it remain undetected for several months, and how did Palo Alto go about figuring out what it was? And does the fascination with this story apply to who the targets is and where it's coming from, and the fact that it's Palo Alto doing it? Is there like a geopolitical angle there that made this stand out as well?
I think there's a lot of questions here. Someone knows. Was it like a warning not to say it? Okay, I'm not gonna say that.
That's right.
I was about to drop attribution. I'm not gonna say it was whoever.
You see?
I think there's people and possibly even people in the chat right now who know more about this story. But instead of me ruining their news, I would just perhaps allow them to write about it in the future, which I think would be amazing.
Why are
If
we
they
so
get the
coy about
approval.
this one?
I want them to write. Like, I don't want me to ruin the story, but I want them to get approval from their marketing departments, from whoever, from their bosses, from their lawyers, from their lawyers, and from their polygraphs and from their DC overlords and whatever, just to be able to write a simple blog with IOCs in which they share more about this. What I think they did special here, I think that, of course, who was it? I think it was Meta that originally spotted this bug, if I'm not mistaken,
Correct.
and they reported it to Samsung. And I think that Palo Alto, they knew what to look for. So once you did a bit of research into that CVE, in particular the Apple side of things, which involved the Adobe DNG file format that was being exploited, which is again variation of TIFF, improved version of TIFF. And once they knew what to look for, I think that allowed them to craft some kind of hunting rules on VirusTotal, which in turn found the samples. So once you have the samples, then it's game on. So you can do like a lot more.
Why aren't more labs doing this? Why is this such a unique case?
It's not easy. Like this is actually tricky because I was looking into this story as well. Matt Swish, our friend, actually he developed some detection algorithms for this with his tool Elegant Bouncer. So in reality, it's not easy to find these things. So again, it's a testament or proof to how skilled the researchers were.
It calls for skill and some institutional knowledge of how things work, right? Juanito, why aren't more organizations, why aren't more threat intel labs finding these things? You have a thought on this LANDFALL?
No. I think enough has been said about it.
Enough has been said about LANDFALL. All right, you go.
Me?
Yes, you're up next. I agreed with Costin. We both had LANDFALL on our top of our list. So
you motherfuckers. Okay. I've talked about this thing. I've got two things that I want to nominate just because they're things that I have gone back to 100 times. And some of the people that listen to this podcast are going to roll their eyes and say, oh, you've talked about this already. And that's precisely the point, because I didn't want to fall into the recency bias of just saying like, oh, the coolest thing of the year is the thing that I remember from 3 weeks ago, because I don't remember anything. First is this Bunnie Huang hardware supply chain keynote from Black Hat Asia. I brought it up multiple times when the video was not available. The video is now openly available for people to watch. And I really want to emphasize this talk because honestly, it's an excellent structured talk. It was just like a really brilliant keynote, but more than anything, this talk has lived rent-free in my mind all year long as we have talked about hardware supply chain issues, the distribution pipelines out of Shenzhen, what's happening with all these things, all these chips and all these like blocked sales of whatever, because what Bunnie describes is not just what could happen with these hypothetical hardware backdoors at different levels and how hard or easy it could be for us to detect them. But more importantly, he talks about why this isn't already happening to the level of, why isn't it rising to the level of opportunity? And interestingly, what he describes is actually the reason that I kept insisting that people listen to this Apple in China book, which is that right now the economic incentives are just good enough and widespread enough to reward the people that have the skills to do the lower levels of hardware backdooring in the existing hardware supply chain. They're already being rewarded stratospherically by their socioeconomic condition by doing warranty fraud. Apple has lost billions of dollars to warranty fraud in 2016 and onward, and there were all kinds of schemes. And there was a lot of coordination with certain, Chinese
Spend a
mafia
second on what warranty
triads.
fraud is.
Right. So part of the really interesting thing that Bunnie talks about there, and that this book I've mentioned talks about a lot, is there was essentially a period of time around 2016 when Apple recorded massive losses due to warranty fraud. And what was happening was these hyper-skilled hardware REs, essentially reverse engineers in China, were figuring out ways to create, let's say I give you an iPhone that's been broken, or an iPhone that is defective or has been traded in or whatever the hell it is, or stolen. How many parts of this iPhone can I repurpose, salvage, remove from within the casing? And at what is the barest setup that I can maintain in there that reproduces an error code for something that Apple will readily cover under their warranty? And so basically, I get an iPhone, right? To us, it might cost $800, $1,000 in the US. I'm a skilled Shenzhen laborer. I go in there and I'm not going to let this shit go to waste. I remove the battery and I put a tiny battery that's much cheaper. I remove a bunch of chips from like the logic board. I remove the 64 gigs of RAM and I leave only 8 gigs of RAM. I do all this hardware shit and I leave just enough, and I put, let's say, some like weighted metal ballast inside of the thing so it feels real. I close it back up, and then I give it to this standard run-of-the-mill mafia, cartel, triad, whatever folks who pay me, let's say, $300 for a fucking laborer in Shenzhen who's getting paid like pennies, right? They're giving me $200, $300. It's a massive amount of money. They in turn get it to a mule in the US who goes to an Apple store and trades it in and gets credit back.
And this stuff is happening at scale.
It was happening at scale to the point where Apple had to record massive losses in their financial disclosures. And they preferred to do that than to really explain what was going on. But Bunnie explains how that works. And this in the context of how, why aren't we seeing more hardware backdoors and that sort of being, taking advantage of the opportunity? And it's like, well, the skills are there. Be careful. Don't really, incentivize these people because the skills are there. They're just being squandered on the fact that, like, for these people at their socioeconomic standard of living, doing fraud is enough to get a massive payday. So, they get to turn around and sell the parts that they just scavenged out of this iPhone. It's why all these stolen iPhones keep ending up in the same place, right? Like they're being resalvaged and repurposed in this, in this building in Shenzhen. But it also speaks, why do I tie it into all the hardware supply chain stuff about AI and whatever? It speaks to the true ecosystem and concentration of hardware reverse engineering and capacity and illustriousness of the Chinese people in this very particular economic zone, who are insanely resourceful and can prototype anything they want and can literally, we saw this, there was a video, I can't remember, it was some gamer site, but there's a video of a guy who literally goes to China to investigate whether NVIDIA GPUs are available there and how they're getting there and whatever. And what he finds is that people are literally building Franken GPUs that don't exist in the US, but they have the level of skill to like increase the amount of RAM in an existing graphics card and get something better than what we can get. Yeah. So the reality of what's happening in hardware in China is akin to what's happening in software in the US. We have superpowers based on the things that we can do in like distributed systems and all this other shit. Thanks, Toro's stretching in front of the camera. and they have unbelievable superpowers on what's happening on the hardware end, and we're just not accurately accounting for each other's skills right now.
You know where I'm feeling this stuff? In like my sneakerhead world. If folks who know me know I have like a sneakerhead background, and some of the fakes and mock-ups coming out of these actual Chinese factories that Nike is using. So Nike is using the same factory, it's the same shoe, the same material. They're just kind of overproducing a few, and then a million of those sneakers get out. And even the guys who are paid handsomely and who know the skills at spotting them cannot. You just can't, because it's the same factory, the same tags, the same people making the same things.
That's a huge issue in luxury goods in general. If you're paying attention to for example, the luxury watch market and handbag market. A couple of years ago, Richemont and LVMH announced that they were essentially taking entire hauls of their products and destroying them in order to lower the overall supply of these products to keep the prices up. And
that's market manipulation. But
well, it is market manipulation, but it is also a very interesting hedge to the oversupply of these things. And I'm not entirely certain that oversupply is based on their own manufacturing. Like, part of what you see, one of the final insights I really want to point out from Bunnie's talk that just like stuck with me is that authenticity is not a binary thing. It's not real or not real. It's a matter of degrees. How fake is a product that was created using the same manufacturing line and machine that makes the original product? Maybe the quality is not exactly as high,
but it is exactly as high. It's the same. That's my point. There is no difference other than it came through tariffs and supply chains.
But that's the point. There are degrees. We just can't tell. Right? Like, there are degrees in the sense of like, you make it in the same machine with the same material, but it doesn't go through the same QA pipeline. So, you know, something that Bunnie talks about, it's much more important with hardware than it is with luxury goods, right? Like with luxury goods, you get a fake LV bag, Louis Vuitton bag made in the same factory with the same leather. Good fucking luck being able to tell. Honestly, at that point, it just doesn't even matter. But with hardware, what was happening, the reason Bunnie got so into this in the way that he tells the story is that he was prototyping something, and he realized that there was a steady rate of failures once they had hit production, and it happened to be a matter of like a certain amount of the SD cards that they were using in the product were all failing. And he starts kind of trying to reverse engineer these particular cards, and he realizes that like they would have like the number, a very specific thing stripped off of them. And it was, for example, these were SD cards that had been repurposed from a manufacturer defect batch, and they had been redressed and repackaged and were being sold as if they were real. And only when you go into the QA testing for the final product do you go, what the fuck? 8% of our product is failing in the manufacturing line. Why? Oh, it's because the SD cards, all of them look the same, but 8% of them actually are coming from a batch of repurposed things at a fraction of the cost that are just not at the same level of quality assurance than what we expected. So he plots this notion of authenticity in degrees. And I think it's a really important thing for us as consumers and Americans to wrap our heads around, that like authenticity is not a true or false thing. It is a matter of degrees. And the truth is that, you know, you can hardly blame the Chinese who are taking advantage of this, because if you can't tell the difference, that's on you. And that's their thinking. And frankly, it's the same thing with the LLMs. That's exactly what we're getting. Dude, that's how we're getting played by the frontier labs. If you can't tell that this was done by 4.0, our cheapest, shittiest model, why should we have boiled the ocean twice to get you this answer? But, you know, I think that's going to cut, you know, in different directions, right?
But it kind of, it hits you back, because now obviously we see it. We see that it's not your top
Yeah.
model, and we start using other models from Elon Musk, from Grok,
Yeah.
from Dario, Amode, and whatever.
Yeah. I mean, look, I agree with you, and I have been following that path with you, but that's why I have been warning since the Anthropic model degradation thing. I'm like, guys, this is a matter of price discovery. As much as I don't want to be paying $2,000 for a model, I would rather pay $2,000 for a brilliant, consistent, reliable model than keep paying $200. And it depends on what day, like the role of a roulette wheel as to whether today I get PhD grade analysis or I get some like flunky high school kid from like suburbia who's, a little hungover and just so happened to kind of read an article about it.
Shout out to Bunnie, Huang, one of the nicest guys on the planet. He did come out to Singapore and did a keynote along the same lines. Did not go into this kind of detail, but along the same lines for us at SAS. What year was that, Costin? 16, 17?
Oh yeah, 19.
19.
No,
19.
19. I think it was.
Okay. Shout out to Bunnie, Huang. Costin, you want to go again? What's your second?
Ryan, where the fuck's
winner?
your story, bro? What the fuck?
I did LANDFALL.
You didn't do landfall. Costin did landfall.
It's on my list. He took it off my list.
Fine.
No, it's our landfall. Okay, it's ours.
Go ahead, but
I have another one which I think it's quite interesting. Did you say the communists?
Yes, I called you some fucking communists over here. But our landfall.
To honor what you were saying, so there's this story from the Qianxin research team in China that I thought was quite interesting because it kind of showcases research capabilities from the Far East. And remember, the last year I was also talking about this in the context of Gobrat. That was like a different, quite interesting story in my opinion. We tend to make a lot of fun about whatever, it gets published from Chinese companies, from some Russian companies, for good reasons. However, every now and then we do see really, really interesting research. And I think there's a case here with their blog about this CSDN waterhole attack. I think it was very interesting. And now CSDN, that's the Chinese software developer network on a really major online platform community for software developers, primarily in China, which is probably one of the largest developer networks in the world with over 30 million registered users. They got hacked in the past couple of times. I remember back in the days when people were sharing dictionaries built with passwords from the registered CSDN users, including like other information such as email, account names. And I thought that this research, which talks about the waterhole attack against the CSDN, it's kind of unique in the sense that nobody else has covered it, and there's no further research on it. There's no additional details from any other company. It went mostly ignored. While to me, it seemed like a very, very interesting thing. I know that in the blog, they do point perhaps towards this Lucifer gang. So that's one possibility of attribution. Again, who knows? In my opinion, this was also one of those kind of forgotten stories that probably deserves more attention. And again, props to the Qianxin research team, which constantly publish cool stuff. That's by the way, shout outs to Alex Turing, who works there, and he was also speaker at Virus Bulletin and a few other conferences. And I think he constantly does pretty good presentations on very, very interesting stuff. So shout outs to Alex and the other guys who worked on this blog.
I didn't have this on my list, but I put this Chinese visibility into Western ops as kind of an okay thing this year, like an okay, not okay. And I think, and I'll just kind of repeat what Kostin said, which is right in line with my thinking, is that despite some concerns around quality issues and the report is not good or it's not well written and it's only in Chinese and you have to translate it and you have to run into these woke AI models to translate it and all that stuff, at least we're getting some visibility into that. And from a purist perspective, if you're just interested in the purity of the threat intel, you can't be completely dark to one side, the most active side, right? And the fact that we get CNCert, the team that you just mentioned, Kostin, some other private sector organizations, but CNCert as well. We got the time center thing from them. We would have never known about that stuff. So from that standpoint, I want to say it's pretty okay that we're hearing from the Chinese on Western operations. You got a thought on this, Juanito?
I mean, I want to see more of their stuff. I'll be honest that I'm not sure I fully understand the import of what is being pushed here, but that's because I didn't get around to reading the original story itself. So like I know that it's important, but like what's the deal with CSDN, Kostin, if I'm missing it?
Just a huge thing. Again, with 30 million users, it's kind of this. What would be the equivalent in the Western world? Like nowadays, there's not so many. Maybe something like a coding Reddit or something like that, with
like Stack Overflow, or
Stack Overflow is probably a much better choice. Also nowadays, Stack Overflow is kind of dying, sadly. I think I saw a lot of malware back in the days, Chinese malware that had snippets that were at some point published on CSDN, and obviously there were like people asking, hey, can you help me with the encryption algorithm, and someone helps them, and then you see it in the malware and you are like, who asked for that? And that's like indirect attribution. So there's a lot of people, a lot of including threat actors, that were relying on CSDN to improve their tool sets. And I thought that whoever hacked into CSDN waterholed it with some interesting scripts to deploy, again, like custom tools. I think that should be somebody interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I know exactly what you mean. This reminds me of like some stories about, back when Silas Cutler and I were trying to chase down some of the guys behind X4L, Rootkit, and some of those things, just finding the original snippets of code in CSDN and some of these older websites, which I can't remember the names off the top of my head. And it was fascinating to be like, well, is this the same developer? I don't know. They've been using the same support email since 1990 whatever, when they were publishing the source code of this thing. Fascinating times.
Fascinating.
But yeah, I didn't know about the watering hole attack. That's super cool. I think anything that shows us like behind the veil of stuff that's happening in China is always fascinating.
Let me jump to my second story, which is, we'll stay in China, which is ViciousTrap. I don't know if you remember the conversations we had around ViciousTrap. Sequoia and Grey Noise, there was some hiccup there around timing of the release of the research. But we got research out of Sequoia and Grey Noise, documented this Chinese Nexus campaign compromising these exposed edge devices, but not for use them in attacks, but just to use them as honeypots, as lures to kind of collect zero days. We don't know what they're doing with it. And I think the reason this lived rent free in my head is that it kind of fell under the radar. And with all these edge devices being in the news, with OD attacks everywhere, I feel like this is one of those examples of threat actors playing the long game, threat actors, it being part of a full ecosystem that includes honeypotting and so on. And then when we discussed it on the podcast, Kostin had my ears stand up when he said, I know a little more, but I'm on the NDA, so I can't talk about it. And once he says NDA, I'm just like, I'm more interested now. So I thought that was fascinating research where these guys actually got visibility into these compromised edge networks, and then figuring out that the threat actor was sitting on there and using it as a honeypot to collect what? Kostin, do we know what they were collecting? Is there any sort of more that you can share at this point?
I'm super impressed that you remember the story. Obviously, in your book, it's still not okay. It's not a closed page. We didn't turn the page on this story. Unfortunately, I can't tell you anything else besides what I already said on this topic. But again, I hope that whoever knows more about this will publish more. But you have that kind of intuition that there is more to hear, and I would be
Am I
very
wrong, or am I
curious.
just being conspiracy Ryan?
No. You have a perfect intuition, and this is a very cool story. And yeah. Again, props to Sequoia, and by the way, the guys at Sequoia, they have another story which it was in my list, and but like my list was getting too large, and the show was about to start. I didn't have time to edit, but I'm gonna just mention it. And they have a story they published in October about Polar Edge. Very interesting analysis of an orb network. Polar Edge is this backdoor that is used for the purpose of building this orb networks, targeting routers, network devices. I think there's a lot of discussions nowadays about orb networks, but very few people actually publish interesting materials about it. So there's like a lot of talks at private conferences, at closed conferences. There's a lot of discussions on orb networks. It's like, up there in the level of interest. It's very high. I mean, speaking like from the point of view of what we receive as requests and what I have seen from other companies, customers, orb networks are one of the most interesting things at the moment. And it's nice like when companies like Sequoia, they actually publish something with the ARA rules, with IOCs, with a thorough description, network infrastructure. So kudos for that. And of course, the story that you mentioned.
What can you
on
do
your
sitting
list.
on that box? Like when I honeypot one of these edge devices, can I just collect everything there? Can I see if there's someone else compromising it? Is it like a territorial dispute type thing at play here? What is it?
It's the perfect analogy for this is this book from Sushin Liu that gave the name to our podcast, The Three-Body Problem. I think the second book is called The Dark Forest. And the last one is Death End. But in particular, the Dark Forest is where he talks about this concept that we're all living in a dark forest, and there's like a killer behind every tree, waiting for someone to just step into the light. And I think it's pretty much the same what we are seeing here. There's a lot of threat actors out there leveraging orb networks, not just one or two. There's a lot. And some of them, they are actively fighting other threat actors leveraging orb networks. So it's like a fight in the dark forest between the operators of these relay boxes. And the goal is just to capture the other team's 0 days, to capture their exploits and to capture their tool sets, to identify their infrastructure, and then to penetrate, hack into the other's infrastructure, shut it down, disrupt it, degrade it, and make it unoperational. So a lot of this dark forest activity, I think, is related to what we are seeing here in this story that you mentioned.
It's just fascinating that they keep it operational, even with their own implant sitting on it, right? And it's not only their own, but now it's researchers' own as well. And it feels like at some point it's at Teddy, this situation where, who really owns it.
I think that's a lot more common.
That's what makes it fascinating.
It's a lot more common than people believe. And like the concept, the territorial dispute that the NSA pioneered more than a decade ago, I guess, perhaps even like 2 decades ago. This is kind of the standard nowadays. If you are an advanced actor and if you have advanced operations that involve orb networks, passive implants, anonymization, one-way data diodes, VPN, store, passive data collection, SIGINT, and whatever. If you have all these capabilities, then you need to do territorial dispute. You need to be aware of other teams' implants. You need to be aware of their operations. You need to do deconfliction with the friendlies. And I think this is a lot more common nowadays than people believe.
Kostya, we just had a question in chat earlier, maybe about half an hour ago, and it just flashed in my mind when you mentioned having to do your own deconfliction and so on, which is, how do people get in touch with you to discuss something around APT, hunting for APTs on my own home network. You remember that presentation you did for a couple of years ago?
Sure.
Someone in chat was asking, how do they get in touch with you to figure out maybe they want to go hunting on their own? Is there a easiest way to reach
hit
you?
me on X. I mean,
DMs are open?
DMs are open, or like if you just publicly tag me, if you want to say, hey, at Cryo, help me out or something, I'll see the message in case
Gotcha.
DMs are not open, but DMs are open.
Hopefully the viewer is still on YouTube.
I spend like, I don't know, 9 hours per day on X, I guess. Something
Oh la
like
la.
that.
Jesus, man.
Feeding the Grok
What
algorithm.
the fuck? Yeah.
Juanito.
Grok, is this
why?
true?
I'll tell you one thing. Why I'm wasting like 9 hours per day on X. The reason is I'm doing community notes. I'm doing like thousands.
You're the guy doing all
Really?
the community notes?
Thousands of community notes. Like, let me check my profile. I'm gonna check my profile right now on community
Jeez, why?
notes. Why
just
I'm doing this?
Yeah.
What happened to like editing Wikipedia
Man,
or
I
something?
feel it's like my duty to counter disinformation. There's like so much
Wow.
disinformation on X.
And
So
you're
at
not
some
using an
point-
LLM?
What do you mean? No,
You're-
like I'm just. How would you use it? Because like I'm just rating community notes. I think I wrote
okay.
a few. So on my profile, your profile, click. Let's see.
This is amazing.
I want to see how many did I do? What is it? I have 1,300 community notes pending.
I may have like 1,300 requests for community notes that I routinely ignore because I just don't have the time for it.
86 of my ratings were helpful, 39 were not helpful, rich and not helpful. And actually, by the way, there's 2 of them that actually ended up helpful when I rated them not helpful. And I think it's wrong. Like personally, I honestly think
Community
it's
is
wrong.
wrong.
I think that these ones actually ending up as helpful when I rated them not helpful. I think it's wrong. But whatever, doesn't matter. I'll
news.
keep doing it. That's why I
I do
spend 9
find
hours
community
per day.
notes somewhat helpful to provide a little bit of context and background. I don't know how reliable they are, or how I don't know how much they can be doctored, or how much the algorithm can kind of feed a certain community. I don't trust any of it, but I do use it in terms of actually reading them. I don't contribute to them.
Some of them are brutal. Like there are some community notes, especially on politicians, bragging about their amazing achievements. And some community notes are brutal. Like it's a joy to read them.
By the way, if you know anyone working at Twitter or Twitter security, I lost access to Twitter on the desktop. I only have it on my phone, and at some point I'll get logged out and I lose my account altogether. I'm dead serious. I filled out a support ticket and they said, okay, click this link so we can be sure it's you. And I clicked the link and they said, oh, your account has been suspended. We will put your... But I'm still logged in on my phone. So if I know anyone at Twitter or anyone at X,
at X, please help.
Anyone at X who has the
Brian.
ability to just validate that it is me and I want to get my account back on the desktop, please.
What's your account again?
RyanAraine.
Ryan.
Correct,
Ryan
with one
Araine.
N in the middle. It's weird. I think I got caught up in that kind of migrating to MFA and hardware key. I don't remember the thing, but
re-enrolling.
Re-enrolling. I think that my account got caught up in that. I'm still logged in on my phone, but I can't do community notes. So this is the reason I don't do community notes. I'm kidding.
Please fix
Juanito,
Ryan's account.
Give me your next pick.
Okay, this is again getting another one of these stories that I won't shut the fuck up about over and over, but lives rent free in my mind, did a whole lot for me this year, and by way of reflection and something that I just kept telling people about, like, you have to read this, you have to read this. It was Sean Heelan's post on how I used the title was How I Used O3 to Find CV 2025-37899, a remote zero-day vulnerability in the Linux kernel's SMB implementation. I think that that post is genuinely fascinating to me because we were right at the peak of sort of reasoning models becoming the thing, and we were having these discussions of how like you don't you shouldn't just be using like the normal inference models. Look at how much better the reasoning models are. And then people starting to have conversations about, well, how good are they actually? What is the limit of what they can and can't do? And Sean Heelan comes out with what is essentially a hard eval in cybersecurity. And I think what he did at this point back in early 2025 is the North Star of what most um, security research, or like AI applied towards security research, needs to shoot for, which is he had a hard eval. Essentially, he had found a zero day in an open source project, and he had already submitted it, but it had not gotten patched, it had not gotten publicly documented, which means the model could not possibly have been trained on this information already. So in that time, he experimented with what would it take for this model or any of these models that were available at the time to um, find that zero day by itself, right? So how do we test whether this thing can actually reason and figure out that there is a zero day there in the first place? And the findings themselves were sort of fascinating. It was really the first time that I think we were getting these sorts of insights quite spelled out quite so clearly. Like, we obviously have a lot more information about harnesses and stuff thanks to Perry Adams's work and all the folks at AIXEC, the Cyber Grand Challenge. But this was the first like sort of grading of some of the commercial stuff that we were getting from LLMs. And I think the first time folks realized, at least folks in security were forced to kind of realize the stochasticity of these models, the fact that they were giving us that, it's not about one-shotting a problem, like coming in and giving it all this stuff and getting the output from it all in one go, but rather, Sean was doing 100 runs at a time and saying, look, at X amount of these runs, it thinks that, it's a false negative. At X amount of these runs, it's a false positive. And X amount of these runs, it actually kind of figures it out, but not fully. And X amount of these runs, it actually gets the results for the zero day. And that in itself, I think, is great science, is great research. He published his on GitHub. He published his code, like a harness, like what lines of code he was providing, the context engineering. But where it gets fucking wild is, as he's doing this testing, the LLM O3 discovers a different vulnerability that Sean had not discovered in that same code base. So it was the first, according to Sean, it was the first discovery of an O-Day in the wild by a reasoning model. So, this lives rent free in my mind. I have brought it up to 1 million people, and I've said it on this podcast 1,000 times. So apologies for the redundancy, but this to me stands out as like one of the best pieces of research published in 2025, hands down, for what it did to bridge AI and security in a meaningful way.
How does this research get advanced? Like, what is next in the flow?
I think this research is without a doubt already been leapfrogged massively by Expo and some of the, and Aardvark and some of the things that were developed for AIXEC. And in particular, when we were out at Countermeasures Conference in Ottawa, Perry Adams keynoted, and she really emphasized an important point that I don't know is being properly taken advantage of, which is people were forced to open source and document their findings after the competition. And I don't know how many folks have sat there and actually read through these papers and looked at the code. I'll be the first to admit that I have not yet. But there's a literal gold mine of what it took for these teams in a competition to harness these models into repeatedly being able to find vulnerabilities and what works better and what system setup and harness and settings and blah 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 works better. Is it better to get a model to be very specific at trying to find Java bugs, or is it better to have a generalist model that just finds vulnerabilities and apply it to a Java code base or a C++ code base? Like all those things that maybe sound very simple, again, to the have-nots, to the people that are just using the front ends, that is the real like experimental science part of this shit. And anywhere that somebody lets those results out into the public, you should be collecting that stuff and distilling it for all it's got and fucking running with it, because it is those are pearls being cast before swine.
Shout out to Sean Heelan.
And question, like, what would be today's equivalent of 03?
Bring back 03.
Well,
Bring back
so
03.
wait. 03 has not gone anywhere. If you go and hit deep research in the current front end of OpenAI or in the API backend, that is still 03 from what I understand. Like if you go on the API, you can hit 03 deep research 2025, blah, blah, blah. That's when you're doing deep research, it's still that model as far as I understand, which is really comforting because, I mean, look, I'll tell you something. I am deeply attached to 01. To me, 01 is still the fucking greatest thing that ever came out, and I'll still hit it via the API sometimes just to chat about like very conceptual stuff, because it was like, it was reasoning with me.
You're chatting
we were
with a bot for real?
Bro, we like it's like a shared ideation thing, and I have not found any model of the new ones that does it in the same flair and the same conceptual elevation than that I was enjoying with 01. And 03 sort of as a close correlate.
I'm looking like forward to see the day when Sam Altman meets with the Jags and gives him like a small NVIDIA DGX running 01, like as a kind of, you know, historical artifact.
It's a prize for all the shilling.
Dude, I'll fucking tattoo the weights for at least a portion of 01 somewhere if somebody wants to give them to me. Whoever stole the weights for 01 or whatever, the deep seek people, if you folks wanna you know, provide some of those traces, we'll put them on.
Shout out to Sean Heelan. Shout out to the guys at Big Sleep, Aardvark, Amazons, all these folks dabbling with offensive security research and zero-day discovery using this kind of reasoning models. I know Big Sleep is finding some pretty cool browser-based things as well. So shout out to all those guys.
Didn't they find like some iOS stuff recently?
I'm not sure.
Big Sleep found an iOS vulnerability.
The last batch of patch, there was a Big Sleep reference.
Come on, that's no joke.
All right, Kostin, your next pick, please.
All right, let's see what else we have here.
His list is so long, he's like going through on the fly.
Like, look, we're just past 2 hours, Mark.
No,
it's okay, we got 2 more to go, man.
We're
halfway
halfway 3
there.
more hours, yeah. Last 2 days ago, I did like 100 abs. So now when I laugh, it hurts.
You see, this is why I don't do any. Nothing.
That's the way, man.
I'm protecting myself.
What we have, like this year, I think this year, as well as maybe some of the previous years, we've seen a lot of stories about cyber mercenaries, private sector offensive actors is what Microsoft calls them. And especially in Europe, we've seen a lot of stories about abuse, spying on politicians, spying on activists, governments using this to target all sorts of people, including bank CEOs. And there's a lot of news about these, let's say, abuses, but very, very little IOCs. So we read about, I don't know, graphite being deployed through a new zero-day. There's like almost no details, or there's like no samples, or we know there's samples, but no one is sharing them. So especially when we find a blog, when we see a blog from someone who gives a couple of IOCs, it gives you Yara rules or infrastructure, I think that's particularly important. And there was a kind of maybe coordinated release about the Intellexa's toolset Predator, which has been used extensively in Europe. So several entities published about it. I think Google published about it. Also, um, Amnesty published about it, but I think the best one was the blog that was written by our friend Julian Ferdinand Vögele with his colleagues from the Inside Group at Recorded Future. This one, in my opinion, had the best information, had the best IOCs, and it had like the most. It was out of all the three blogs that were released around the same time. This was the best. Of course, it doesn't mean that the others were not useful. Together, all of them, all three of them, published, like I said, around the same time. They give you an amazing insight into the latest operations connected to Predator Gate, to spying on opposition politicians, on activists, and so on and so on, pretty much all around the world. So this one, in my opinion, was one of the most insightful research blogs of this year. So again, kudos to Julian and his colleagues for writing it.
That's a good pick. I actually have them in my shoutouts notes.
Amazing.
I have a not okay section, and in my books it's okay. CNCert, like I mentioned, CNCert is okay. Anyone looking into this kind of murky world of private sector offensive actor / commercial spyware vendor / NSO predator, all these. I actually have one on my list here. The Dante thing, the Kaspersky.
Yeah.
The Kaspersky figuring out Memento and Dante and so on. Like anyone doing any research into this space and giving us any visibility into what these motherfuckers are up to, I give them an okay in my book. And I think Julian does amazing work. I saw him present at LabsCon. He's been doing some work there. I know it's not his Juanito's favorite company, but
Julian's changing my mind, man. I honestly, Julian does such good work that I'm turning the corner on it.
Yeah, I'm going to just join Kostin to say that any sort of visibility, Bill Marchuk, Amnesty International, Citizen Lab, all of those folks that are sharing, whatever they're sharing. I mean, we're not getting everything. We complain that, people are withholding samples.
It's our job. It's our job
to complain.
It is our job.
And curse.
That was a good pick. I can go next quickly. I can. Another one that lived rent free in my head was this Bybit crypto heist. The North Korean draining 4.5 billion cryptocurrency from Bybit, compromising Safe Wallet, this multi-sig platform, just billions of dollars disappearing into thin air, with like a really interesting technique and using JavaScript on the back end to get employees to have money sent to the wrong wallet. It was just like a exploded my brain till now. And then we had the FBI confirming that this Bybit thing was traitor. It's a dumb name. Attributed to North Korea. But I just think the entire North Korea malware ecosystem is just so fascinating to me. The magic money side of it, the crypto side of it, the fake employee side of it, the fact that it's just, this stands out in my mind, this supply chain UI attack as well. And I think we don't really get a lot of visibility into these things. I think a lot of this happens and it never goes reported. The platforms kind of make do when the money's stolen and it goes away quietly. Kostin, as our crypto correspondent, did this make your list at all?
Yes, and to be honest, I was thinking about this, but the reason I didn't put it in my list was that I was trying to, in my mind, kind of see how would you connect the failures from the successes. And this, in my book, it registers as a huge failure. Like, it's more of a success on the attacker's side. And then I was thinking, okay, if we're opening the Pandora box of attacker successes, what other attacker successes do we need to talk about? Because I think there's been a bunch of other attacker successes. But overall, for 2025, I think this is one of the most amazing attacker success stories. And from the defender side, like one of the most terrible, sad failures. The fact that the cold wallet was not a cold wallet per se, but was kind of a hotish, warm wallet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, there's like so many points there. And I think that
It was an intricate attack as well. It wasn't a straightforward thing. It
yeah,
required a lot of careful planning. It required
preparation.
some stealing keys, a lot of preparation. It was, and it was targeted too. Like they didn't just go blast. They went specifically after a thing. And I want to ask a question on this point for you. And it's a question I've asked you many years around our visibility, percentage of visibility into all APTs. And that number has changed over the years. And I'm curious about
The
our
age-old
visibility.
question.
But our visibility specifically into North Korea ecosystem. I know we lean on Qianxin, Zscaler, and these guys are doing amazing, incredible work. But what percentage of all North Korean malicious activity you think we have eyes on? Do you think this is just the tip of the iceberg, or we kind of have a feel for what's happening?
I would love to have Song-Soo come and answer this question himself, because I think that he's got an amazing understanding of what North Korea is doing nowadays. If you ask me from my side, I think we have a decent visibility into, let's say, their overall operations, in the sense that we see a bit of everything. But when you speak about like some very specific things, such as maybe contagious interview, right? Some estimate there's like hundreds of different teams doing this in parallel. And then if you ask me like how many of those we actually know about or catch, I think the number is much smaller. So perhaps we see a lot of what is going on, and we get a sense of what is their interest and what is it that they're focused nowadays. But maybe we see a lot less when it comes to the specific numbers of what individual teams are doing. And maybe probably in the same category is this story about Amazon with their keyboard measurement thingy, when they caught one of these IT workers trying to infiltrate through the fact that the delays between the keystrokes were a bit too high. I know from my sources that it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem not just for companies, it's a huge problem for governments, even for organizations inside the European Union that are constantly getting targeted by these kind of insider threats from North Korea. Meaning that they are not interested only in financial gains or stealing cryptocurrencies, but there's more to it. And one of the things that I noticed all these years about North Korea is that they work harder than almost anyone else. Remember when we
They're working
profiled
for food.
Yeah, not only that, but we profiled the operation hours of these teams, and we saw that they were working like 18 hours per day. Like they wake up, they work, and they go home, then they keep working. 18 hours per day is more than any other group
Startup
of
grind.
APT teams. And that is visible. Unfortunately, they've been progressing at a much faster pace than anyone else. They got, like, if you remember the Sony pictures attack of 2014, like back in the days, and if you look what's going on nowadays, it's a huge change. And this is what makes them very, very dangerous. The rate at which they're improving and the amount of resources they're willing to throw in, and how hard they're actually working.
Juanito, you run a lab. How do you feel about the visibility into North Korean activity as a whole? Do you feel like you guys have a bead on it? Do you feel like it's underrepresented in the entire landscape? How do you look at it?
I don't have the hubris to ever think that we have some threat actor we just have a beat on them. And I'll say that across the board. Even at times when I think we've had some amazing visibility, like some godlike fourth-party collector visibility into some threat actor, I still think it's a lot of hubris to I think it's the SIGINTER's dilemma to kind of be so impressed with yourself and what you're able to collect that you assume that means you have a pervasive understanding of the operations, and that's just never true. That's where
you want to get a feel.
blind
You want to
sites-
get a feel for what's actually happening.
Well, so what I'll say is, I think we have a really good beat on certain parts of their operations, and I'll say that from the lab's perspective, And then I'll answer, I think, from the wider ecosystem perspective. From the Sentinel Labs perspective, I think we've done excellent work. Chris St. Myers, Alex Milenkowski, Tom Hagel, a lot of the folks have done amazing work on the North Korean, fake IT worker stuff. And like we're generating intel. We've talked a lot about how we've been using Synapse to kind of model some of that stuff. The folks got we literally got our company's recruitment pipeline piped into Synapse and have been using it to generate our own data. And then eventually we went from they tried and failed to apply to jobs at our company to, oh, we now generate intel for other companies to use. And I think that's a huge win. So do I think we have a beat on it? I think we have some pretty good insight into it. That said, I don't think anyone has a good sense of the true volume and scale of what is being done. And the way that you guys describe them is like they're working very hard. Yes, I think they're also sprightly and they diversify, and there's no way that we aren't at the end run of what we already know, and probably already switching to a different, better, more streamlined mechanism of them figuring out that, well, we actually make our money by focusing on this type of company or by doing this sort of thing. And they're bound to start becoming more efficient, because lately, I think so far what we've seen is a planet scale spray and pray approach. And it's very inefficient and it's very loud and it's not being taken advantage of for the true opportunities that it creates. But it's only a matter of time before somebody goes, whoa, 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 you're leaving way too much value on the table. This is a massive waste of time. You guys are putting you're squandering efforts. Let's fix these ops and sort of get the most value out of them. And then we are really going to start seeing some interesting suffering. Just to kind of put a bow on that from the lab side, I think Phil Stokes has also just got an amazing beat on a lot of the Mac side of what the DPRK folks are doing. And then amazing work from the folks at Chainalysis and some of these other places tracking what is happening in the cryptocurrency space. But I feel, that experience they say astronauts have when they leave planet Earth and they look back and they see how small the planet is, and there's this apparently there's some kind of psychological phenomenon where you suddenly feel this great sense of oneness with all of humanity and all these problems kind of melt. That's how I feel when I look at the DPRK activities in the cryptocurrency space. For the shit that we are seeing and finding out about, I feel like there's so much that we don't find out about, so much that they're doing that we don't know about. We're not even like firefighters. We are basically the insurance adjusters that come in long after the place burned down just to figure out how much money we're going to have to pay for in an insurance claim. Like, we are so far behind these guys. It's insane. And that's my perception. I'll defer to Kostin on what he thinks about that space.
Well, pretty much the same as you were saying.
Yeah, I'm just glad that we have stopped underestimating the North Koreans and dismissing them as silly and stupid without internet access, and with you know what I mean? Like, we caricature the North Koreans in a way, and at the same time, on the technical brilliance, social engineering brilliance, these guys are winning. I mean, they're clearly winning. So shout out to all the folks tracking that stuff, and especially the folks sharing IOCs and some telemetry for us to go hunting. Juanito, you get to go next.
Okay, so this one got a little bit spoiled already. We already mentioned it, but I definitely wanted to talk about this DeepSeek R1 paper, and it was very beginning of the year, right? Like, so we get DeepSeek late, I believe, as you mentioned, sort of December 2024.
December 5th, 2024.
We get if I remember correctly, and it's not my hallucination, the paper, the actual DeepSeek R1 paper, comes out in January of 2025, and at the end of January we get Dylan Patel's semi-analysis analysis of the DeepSeek claims. And I think these two pieces need to be taken together, because I think it's a fantastic microcosm of, or a fantastic interplay of all of the forces that are involved in this shit. So the DeepSeek paper itself has some amazing insights that we would all do very, very well to hold on to, particularly when it comes to what you can do with different types of like multi-headed latent attention and different types of architectures, but also most importantly, what distillation does. There's this surprise that comes with the DeepSeek paper, which is we have all these frontier labs trying to make bigger and bigger and bigger models, and they think that scaling that up means that that's how you're going to get best results, and that means that there is a moat behind them, because anybody who can't train mega super big ultra expensive models cannot possibly compete with the American frontier labs. What the DeepSeek paper actually did, not the hype scary part, but the actual technical part, is it highlighted the true power of distillation as a technique, which is to say, once you have the really good, really big reasoning model, you can take a smaller model and basically have the big expensive model tutor the small model, and the small model will start to perform reasoning as an emergent capability, without having the same massive scale and without requiring the same massive hardware to run. Which is why, like, yes, you can try to run the DeepSeek R1, as Gabe Shapiro calls it, the chunky boy, if you have like the big hardware, but most people can run some version of a distilled DeepSeek R1, let's say DeepSeek R1 distilled into Qwen or Llama 3.7 or whatever, in their hardware on their MacBook. And it was an incredibly powerful and important thing to learn that I suspect we haven't seen the full impact of just yet, because if Apple is ever able to get ahead on their dream of what the LLM, the privacy preserving AI future would look like, they're going to need small language models that somehow perform at a good enough capability to bridge a lot of the day-to-day requirements, so you only call out to the mega models when you really need something important. And there's no way that isn't going to entail this insight that you can distill big model capabilities into tiny models that you can run on an iPhone or on an iPad or on a MacBook. So I think that's the real power of the DeepSeek moment, rather than the panic that SF went into and that investors went into, where they assumed that meant there was no moat. I think it's a more nuanced point. I think it also showed something important that we tend, it's a lesson we keep forgetting, which is whenever we get too spoiled rich kid with our technological development, we really leave a lot of value on the table. What the Chinese are showing us is what you can produce when you have really smart people who think it's important to use the full pig, from hoof to tail, right? You're not leaving any value on the table. You're not throwing away valuable stuff. There is a lot of performance gains and optimizations that are right on the table that we're not even bothering with, because we have this like rich kid with daddy's hedge fund credit card, approach to things. Like, oh, you need this to be more, you need more of this? Fuck wasting time making it more efficient. Just spin up more servers. Just build a fucking mega 100 gigawatt GPU mega farm. And you go, sure, but how about just making let's get clever and make the fucking thing more efficient, right? And like the Chinese are showing that there's a lot of value to be squeezed out of necessity. And that's a lesson that we've always learned from, the Eastern Europeans. We learned it from the Russians. We learned it from the Israelis, from the Romanians, Belarusians, people doing really cool shit in tech because they need to, because they don't have the resources on hand. And in America, it's a lesson we keep forgetting and having to learn the hard way over and over again. And sorry, this is like a massive rant, but just to finish capping that point, the semi-analysis piece is awesome because it is then Dylan Patel landing the propaganda boat from, we were able to do this with $6 million to fuck you. It actually cost you $1.6 billion to do what you just did. But it's still very cool and it's still really important. It's just, you're also fucking lying to all of us. And it was like a really good expression of all of the politics and dynamics that we are now knee deep in every single day.
Where does this research go? Like, what's the next natural evolution in this kind of reasoning and showing us the reasoning? Because a big part of the DeepSeek was showing us how they got to this thing. Like, what's next? Where are the frontier labs heading in the next direction?
There's so much next. So from there, I think it was a good moment. It was the beginning of like the loss of innocence with the frontier labs and AI providers, right? That no, not everything they say is true. No, not everything they claim is to be taken at face value. There are things they don't know. They aren't necessarily the smartest kids at the table. There are other smart people doing smart things. We need to kind of broaden our aperture. Like, people learned a lot from that. But then subsequently, I think it also broke this like sycophantic love spell that we had with the transformer. Like, yeah, it's great that the transformer architecture got us here, but we probably are going to need other technological advancements and breakthroughs to get us beyond that. And you felt like a bit of an idiot saying that in at the end of 2024, when you looked at the insane progress that nobody thought was possible that just comes from transformer architecture being scaled massively. Now it's kind of a foregone conclusion that that's not going to get us to fuck AGI. It's not even going to get us to having like truly learning and performant models. And all of a sudden we're looking back at people instead of like just believing everything Jeffrey Hinton says. You are looking back at folks like Richard Sutton from like the old school reinforcement learning and ML days, who have been saying this whole time, these things are not learning. They're not actually thinking. They're not actually, interacting with the world in a way that means that they're continuously learning from experience. Therefore, it's not the technology that we've been saying it is. It's just the beginning of a step forward. And you have a lot more people dedicating energy and effort into other types of efforts, like just different types of models, different types of reinforcement learning, different types of different applications of the advancements we've gotten into things like world models and robotics, and looking for edge cases in, let's say, security or medicine or wherever that you might find a tighter reinforcement learning loop or something that has a clear value function that isn't dependent on you farming out your work to a bunch of people in Kenya to try to like get what I believe was referred to as sucking reinforcement learning through a straw, because of like the sheer scale of how much is going into training the model versus how much goes into reinforcing what the answer should look like. So just a lot of scale stuff there. Sorry, you got me ranting on there.
No, I'm fascinated by how much of your picks are AI and existential deep thought around AI. So,
bruh, you gave me a new toy to play with. I mean, this was my so the funny thing is like this was my undergrad research. Philosophy of AI stuff was like what I wrote my undergraduate dissertation on, and like I love that shit. But back in those days, it was like a silly niche thing to get into, because it was a foregone conclusion that like, strong AI, which is what AGI used to be called, that shit was just not happening. And nowadays, somehow, like all of the philosophical niche shit that I worked on back at Oxford and back in those days, all of a sudden is really, really relevant because everybody's suffering through the same delusions once again. So I'm super excited by this.
Kostin, summarize your next set of picks. We're not going to go 4 hours today.
Yes, we are. Go pee, man.
Pick the top of the top.
2 observations to what Jags was saying. One is that in Romania we use everything from the pig, including the hooves, and we eat that. And 2, I really miss that Cuban coffee that you were sucking through the straw, like specifically to what you were saying.
I do too.
Good times, man. Good times.
Oh.
But like just one thing that stood out from what you were saying, Jax, about what's next in AI. It's an interesting. I think it's an interesting battle between the 2 different approaches, which is what NVIDIA has on one hand, like this multi-core approach, like generic cores that can do everything, and the ASIC style TPUs that Google is doing, which are in theory more efficient but very specialized. So I'm like really curious to see where this is going. And I think NVIDIA recently bought a company that specializes in the same kind of thing. So Grok, exactly. Kind of suggesting that they do understand that energy is pretty much the limit. So it's all about like optimizing things in terms of energy consumption.
Bro, I just a small deviation there. I remember back when Mike Wyasek and I first co-founded Stairwell, Mike asked me if I wanted to go to dinner with a friend of his from Google. And we go down the street to a Laotian place. I'd never tried food from Laos before. And it's this guy, this sad-looking guy, and he's just telling us about like how difficult the governance of his company is, and this startup is such a mess and whatever. And he looks so sad, and I was like, dude, what the fuck is this guy even working on? He's like, oh, he has this startup that makes like chips for ML and AI stuff, and like this was, I don't know how many years ago. I'm like, oh, that fuck. Why the fuck would you ever bother with that shit? It's so stupid. That was Jonathan Ross from Grok. Like, obviously, good for him. He clearly was in the right place at the right time and is now doing huge things. And I'm happy that he must like, it's not like we're friends or anything, but I'm happy that he must clearly be much happier than the time that I sat at a table with him. But it just goes to show, like, I had zero foresight about what was going to happen. To me, it was like, why would this guy put his energy into this shit?
Nobody had any foresight. And what's fascinating to me is like, this thing is 3 years old. ChatGPT was launched 3 years ago. This is a blip. I mean, we're at the beginning stages of like what we think this thing is, and no one knows anything. The same way you didn't know anything 3 years ago meeting this guy, right now we know nothing. In 5 years from now, we'll look back at the days of like complaining about hallucinations and stuff and wonder what were we talking about. So, Kostin, give me another pick.
The top thing we need to solve, I think we need to solve physics and we need to solve gravity. And once we have that figured out, it's unlimited energy. So once AI becomes smart enough to be able to answer simple questions such as what limits the speed of light to the value that it has. Like very simple questions.
As long as the data centers don't burn down before then. As Juanito keeps warning.
What's next?
Kostin, your last
do you
top
want to
research for 2025.
My last, I have 15 more. What do you mean?
That's what I'm saying.
Got more.
We're going to honorable mentions.
We've got 2 hours and 40, we've got what, another hour and then 20 minutes.
Give me your best. We'll do honorable mentions because I know people look out to this episode and people are very happy. I remember last year people were very happy to be mentioned and to have their work.
I don't know, Ryan. I think you need to go pee, man. I don't know what's going on.
That might put you on the spot.
There's so many things, but I want to say one thing, which is that sometimes you how to put it? A research is better if it's not complete. A research that is partly flawed is like a diamond. Like the perfect diamond is boring, right? It has no value. While on the other hand, a diamond which has like a tiny flaw, it's actually that tiny flaw that gives it value. And I'm like in no way meaning that some of these other researches I'm gonna mention are flawed. What I'm saying is that sometimes companies go ahead and they totally kill a topic and they publish on that topic, leaving essentially no stone unturned. And you read the research and you say like, okay, no, yeah, they found everything. There's nothing for me to do here. And I'm a sad panda when that happens.
Sad
So
panda.
that's why sometimes you see gems like diamonds that actually they give back. It's I don't want to say the gift that keeps on giving, but it's something more refined. And there's like this paper which I thought was one of the most amazing papers of 2025 from our friends Alex Milenkowski and Tom Hagel at Sentinel-1 called Follow the Smoke, about purple haze shadow pad activities. And they talk about the challenges of tracking many different things that overlap in terms of infrastructure, in terms of victims, in terms of malware, in terms of tool sets, and how difficult it has become to try to put order in all these things. And what I appreciate the most about their paper is that they're not hiding the things they haven't been able to solve. Instead of hiding them and saying like, yeah, we don't know what it is, it's unk, whatever, we're not going to talk about it. Instead, they just lay it all open, and they say, here's everything that we have seen about all these things. We think they are aligned with that APT15, the other thing. And the paper has so much in it that it's essentially just the beginning. You can take that, you can dig further, you can take all the IOCs and you can expand on their amazing research. And that's why, to me, it kind of stood out as one of the most impressive things published in 2025. So I don't know if you guys agree with it or not.
Juanito, you go.
I mean, how can I say something objective, right? Of course, I think that it's fucking dope, coming from my team and knowing all the effort that went into it, and also, frankly, I always am a little too frank, but I'd rather show how the sausage is made. You cannot imagine the level of difficulty that we went through in publishing that paper and how much we had to fight internally.
What do you mean we can't
Wow.
imagine?
Tell us.
Well, no, look, man, even for a company like us that has a lot of good sense, it is amazing how much you have to hedge and argue and fight and convince people that people are going to read it in the right light, and that they're not going to look at it and say, oh, well, they're talking about being targeted, so surely S1 got hacked, right? Like, or S1. And the same thing happened with the DPRK thing. We write this whole thing where we're like, look at how we thwarted this and we got this intel. 6 different fucking journalists. So did you guys had an insider? No, we didn't. The whole fucking so you look at this thing, and I'm there doing the editing, and look, Phil Stokes is a fantastic editor for us, and he keeps me honest. But usually we'd be trying to keep out the redundancy, and instead you read these posts and it's like, for the 14th time, let me tell you that nobody hacked us. No, there's no breach because you fucking people will not read this carefully. And then let me share some intel with you. So it's kind of funny, like how much has to go into the politicking just to be able to get something like that out. And I appreciate that Kostin, you found it valuable precisely because that was one of the insecurities going into it, of saying, look, we don't really have the full story here. We definitely don't have this buttoned up. There's several clusters. There's several different types of activity. And no, we don't know how it disambiguates. No, we don't know exactly what APT and hands off to that APT and does this to the other. But if we wait until we know that, then this isn't going to be valuable to anybody else. And if they're targeting one security company, I'll bet you that they're targeting all the security companies. So since we're not hearing shit from anyone else, let's at least put this out there and hope that people get honest, right? So yeah, this is a pleasant surprise. I appreciate it on behalf of the Sentinel Labs folks.
Awesome. Congratulations to those guys. Making Costin's list is not a small item. I've worked with some of those guys when we were planning and heading into LabsCon as well, and I can validate how thorough and detailed they are. So shout out to the Sentinel-1 Labs. Shout out to all the guys in the trenches, fighting to push IOCs, fighting to share samples, arguing with their lawyers. I mean, we've talked about it at length on this podcast. Shout out to those guys who are slowly but surely maybe winning some of those battles.
Ryan, question for you. What was our most popular episode this year? Which one
Our
was
most popular episode this year is going to be my next pick.
All right.
You're anticipating me. I think I am fascinated. The things that live rent-free, we talk about rent-free in my head, is what happens with, for years and years, we've talking about cyber war and what cyber war will look like and what is cyber warfare and is it really cyber warfare? And then you had the Israel-Iran conflict, and we had Hamid Kashfi come on here and talk about the SEPA Bank and Nobitex crypto exchange hacks, the burning of cryptocurrency, radar blinding cyber attacks that kind of paved the way for the air raids. Like anything related to that stuff was just fascinating to me. And our most listened to episode this year was also the first time we went over 3 hours, and it was the Hamid episode on both YouTube and on the audio platforms and on Spotify. Clearly touched the nerve. That guy knows, he's very well into the details of it. And on that lines as well, I think something that we haven't touched on at all on this podcast, and with something that continuously requires tracking, is the KittenBusters exposures and leaks.
Yeah.
So that stuff just fascinates me. The SEPA Bank and Nobitex crypto exchange. Do you remember the story? We had an entire episode on it. I think anything related to actual conflict was fascinating. And I'll lump in another small thing here. There was a security research this year. I don't remember who did it. It might have been Google. But CISA actually published an advisory on some Russian threat actors hacking into war logistics supply chains, cameras at certain locations looking over trains that were bringing weapons in, and that kind of cyber activity tied to war. Juanito, Venezuela just had a big quote-unquote ransomware attack against their big petroleum company, and you and I dismissed it as ransomware last week when we were talking about whether we should talk about it on the episode. Yeah. Turns out that the Venezuelan petroleum company is blaming the U.S. government for it and blaming U.S. intelligence for it, and it might be tied to the conflict there. Who knows? I think any visibility into that is fascinating with me, and that's why I think that episode and the entire scene around how cyber supports military activities, and we actually get some visibility into it, makes the list for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I on the Venezuela thing, I want to believe, right? Like I am definitely on the X-Files camp of really wanting this to, like, wanting some cool shit to go down in cyber, where we can see it. And anytime that you see the truly big boy come out and like flex their muscles, like that is a sight to behold, right? Boy, do I want to watch the mighty American muscle somehow flex somewhere, just for the look. That's our version of a flyover. You know, when you'd have those fucking speeches and then the fucking, jets would fly overhead, you'd be like, wow, what an amazing fucking country we are. Look at those jets. This is our version of that in cyber, is when you get to see, a Stuxnet or something where you're like, holy shit, like we can do some really cool things. And like all of a sudden, all those tax dollars just feel justified, right? But at the same time, Venezuela has been blaming everything wrong on the United States, including, Chavez getting cancer, like them not having medicine, like every stupid fucking thing that has ever happened in Venezuela has been blamed on the U.S.
I don't think you can tie these two, though. I think it's a stretch to say that the Venezuelan blame us for everything, and the people around the blockade and not, and their petroleum company gets ransomed or.
I'm saying that they're not a reliable narrator, so I have to take it with a grain of salt. I want to get excited. I'm not saying that they must be lying, that it couldn't possibly be true. I'm saying that I just don't. I just don't
You have to
I have
imagine
to
there's
be
a ton of cyber activity happening in Venezuela at the
and
hands
the
of
idea that they would
combatants.
even catch it is ridiculous, and that they would even know if they got hit by that instead of, it just so happened that you got ransomware by some fucking random RAS or whatever. It's just it doesn't one does not necessarily entail the other.
Costin, KittenBusters. We have not talked much about KittenBusters, but what's the significance of that campaign, and how can you kind of just fill in the audience on what we know so far?
Yeah, well, I think this year we have seen multiple nation states conducting.
Shout out to Hamid in the chat, by the way.
He's in the chat. Yeah. Cheers. And yeah, like back to KittenBusters, I think there's a bunch of nation states conducting hack and leak operations. Especially this year, we've seen a lot of these hacktivist campaigns, which are a bit too professional. They're a bit too good for being just pure hacktivist operations. But I think the problem with them is that a lot focus on things like influence, shaping a narrative, rather than providing technical indicator and samples that are truly useful to CTI analysts like us. And on the contrary, this KittenBusters campaign, it kind of stood out for me because they were leaking the right kind of data that makes CTI analysts happy. So for me, that's a win. I mean, sure, you can leak tons of documents, and there were a bunch of other stories. No need to mention them, not to go into details. But yeah, this one kind of stood out because it felt like it was the kind of leaking, the right information that CTI analysts want to see in these leaks.
Who are these KittenBusters people, Juanito?
I have no fucking clue. That's it. I have no idea.
What are they leaking? Let's think. What are they leaking?
I mean,
mostly CharmingKitten toolsets, right? So CharmingKitten, being an Iranian APT group, I would say that this is an entity or a group that specializes on tracking Iranian APTs, that cares about them a lot, that probably has more information about Iranian APTs than anyone else.
Is it nation state backed?
I would say yes. I mean, it has to be, because at the level of sophistication and skills and knowledge and ability also to understand their operation, work with those documents, and also know what to leak in a controlled fashion that doesn't burn OPSEC techniques or expose metadata. For instance, if you remember the cases with Guccifer 2.0 and other like GRU affiliated operations, they forgot certain metadata in there. It was ruined from many points of view. So it looked careless, if you want. While these modern hack and leak operations, they are a lot more professional, more careful the way they're done, and the kind of information people understand that if you focus on influence and narrative rather than technical indicators, the output will be a lot less than what you intend to achieve.
I can't shake the feeling that only a few people could truly understand the context and kind of like background institutional knowledge required to understand what is being leaked, what is real, what could be true, how do you tie it back to a few things. And I think that's why people like Hamid becomes very, very valuable in our industries. Like a handful of people can really understand the behind the scenes and the units in Iran that it's connected to and so on. So again, shout out to Hamid. Juanito, any thoughts on this?
Honestly, this is a really fascinating space. There's a diversity of groups that have gone into these sorts of operations, and the fact that, do we know if it's nation state or not? I think more importantly, I want to know if it's not whether they're nation state or not, but I think that in situations like this, it's easy to get complacent. And that's why I say I don't know, and I just stop there, because the lazy, complacent part of me wants to say, I don't know, but I have looked at other groups doing similar things, and it seems to me that it would be obvious that, it's probably an Israeli cutout, or it's, probably a, whatever cutout, but I don't actually know in this scenario. And I think that we as analysts tend to make this mistake of collapsing uncertainty too soon and then missing important information. You know who also cares and stands to benefit? The Brits, the Dutch, the Americans. There's like a bunch of different coordination groups among these different countries. There's you know, the Saudis and the Jordanians and a bunch of other people who have a vested interest in also playing ball. It just, I'm not saying that it is them and it's not the other ones. I'm just saying that I don't know, and I would like to know, but I don't want to lie to myself and
How do
delude
we ever
myself
get
into
to know,
thinking
though?
I know. We don't necessarily, but then, you know, life also surprises us every once in a while,
Somebody
right?
drops
Like,
something
you
in your
know,
lap.
when I was in Cancun watching Kostin drop the equation group post,
Oof.
I remember distinctly. I was live tweeting this, and I remember distinctly thinking, we will never know more about these ops than we do right now. Like, this is a historical moment. Never would I have thought Shadow Brokers was going to happen 2 years later. Who on earth would ever think that that was plausible? You know, you never know. And the same thing happens with, like, we did the Lamberts. Did you ever think we were going to see Vault 7? We were going to see source code and C2 stuff dropping here and there? Their own, like, internal forums? You never fucking know. Did you think that we would ever hear from GCHQ that the Russians were abusing Iranian operations and doing fourth party collection and essentially victim stealing? I mean, it's insane that we know, but I think it's important for those of us with overdeveloped mental machinery. There's a tendency to over rationalize things and not leave a lot of room for life to surprise you. And the truth is that is just a level of well practiced hubris. Life is full of fucking surprises, and we have no fucking clue what's coming. And you gotta leave an opening for that.
Fair enough. Make your last pick.
Bro, I've got stories for days. We're going to be here until your bladder bursts.
Honorable
man.
mentions. We'll dump them all into honorable mentions.
Okay.
My man.
It's just too many.
Okay, so I had two stories, but they're interrelated and they're not too far away from what we were discussing, which is I actually wanted to shout out, this was a bit of cheating, right? The December 2024 New York Times story behind the dismantling of Hezbollah, which is about the beeper operation, and just how, first of all, amazing the investigative work that went into understanding the background that enabled this, what to me is probably one of the greatest intelligence operations and wins of all time. Of all time. Like, I think that you have this, for example, like, there's just certain stories in intelligence history that will just go live on forever as just these, like, apocryphal, larger than life tales, right? Like, you know, I want to say it was Gordievsky providing information about the Russian, you know, nuclear plans and stockpile. You hear about operations in World War II that deceived, you know, the Nazis into thinking that we were invading from a different part of Europe. Like, they're decisive moments in history where intelligence truly changed the scales of what was going to happen in human history. And I think this beeper operation with Hezbollah is one of those that should go down in history as a moment where an intelligence op changed the course of war and how shit went down. And I just, you know, I'm sorry, it's a report from December 2024. Let me get away with it because I just cannot get over how fucking monumental that was and how cool it is to then see a report, be it leaked, be it coordinated, be it sourced, I don't give a shit, but like explaining how long running a con it was to be able to get yourself into the supply chain, to get the hardware in the right places, to design it the right way, to try to minimize collateral damage, to get them to buy the thing, to get them to put the thing in the right place, to then have the self-control to sit on it and not use it at the wrong time, but wait until you were literally at a moment of existential threat, because that's what it was for that country to be potentially overrun from two sides. And Hezbollah being the force projection arm out of all of the proxies that Iran has had around the world, Hezbollah was the one that would do terrorist attacks in Europe, in Latin America. And to see that whole fucking army dismantled is insane. So shout out to that. I said it was two and they were interrelated. The other one was, as you would expect, right? During the invasion, we heard about these drone factories. And similarly, ProPublica had an amazing report about all that went into establishing, the commandos, the Iranian dissidents, the exiles, all of the folks to coordinate an attack from within with these drones to celebrate my birthday, which I really appreciate. And just the phenomenal reporting that goes into showing some of this stuff. I'm not naive. I know that some of this is signaling and leaking intentionally, sure, but also investigative work that goes into helping us to understand what's behind how you make these stratospheric successes. Ryan muted.
It's funny to me when you were talking about the Apple warranty story and about replacing parts in phones and replacing a battery with a lesser battery. This is a story that came to mind. It's like playing with these beepers. I mean, it's this kind of like hardware manipulation in a way. And just, I mean, I remember the story had a Hungarian connection as well with the woman who was like an agent selling the thing. So the long game planning. And then the other thing from this story that always, again, we're talking about living rent-free in your head, is 5 years ago campaign. What is the campaign happening now for something 5 years down the line, right? Because these intelligence agencies don't just run one beeper operation. They run a variety of things. If that had gotten burned, they would have had access. So my brain always goes into conspiracy mode. Man, what else is out there today that is being
remember
prepped?
What was the story that's come up twice already in the past few months about solar cells in the United States having some weird fucking radios from China and stuff like that? You go, like, there is definitely stuff
There's
happening.
smoke. Yeah.
There's smoke. Now, is that the real part of it, or is that somebody misclassifying some random generic piece of hardware that also has like a radio component? We don't know. But the fact that we are not in a position to readily know lets us know how vulnerable we are. And again, full circle, that's why that Bunnie Huang talk is so important, because he's explaining what it would take for us to have the right levels of verification to be able to go after some of these things, and where the limit is. Like, there is a limit to what we can verify in hardware, and you just have to kind of live with that.
According to Mr. Boldy in the chat, the Hungarian lady changed her name recently. She had been, I think, caught up unwittingly in this beeper story. It was crazy. Kostin, you have one more?
I have. I just wanted to say that I think that what we are worried that the Chinese or Russians are doing, we are doing probably 10 times better. So like you say, we just need to wait and see the kind of, what do I mean? Curious what, like the kind of the current solar panel attacks that we are implementing, that we are designing, how they look like, and where they're getting
Who's we? Who's we?
We, like you, you, me,
gotcha.
Baldy, our friends.
Us. Us, bro.
It's us, yes.
The good guys.
And at the same time, like, I was like, for sure, we keep talking about DeepSeek and how representative that was, and I was just thinking that through DeepSeek, the Chinese, they can't force everyone else. So what the Chinese did more with less, which forced the world to do more at the same price. That was, I think, the outcome. Let's
All right,
see what else we have here.
Me and you have an overlap, so let me introduce
We
one,
do?
and then maybe you can dump in there. Microsoft report on Secret Blizzard, I believe we call it Turla, on some ISP level adversary in the middle against embassies in Moscow. I know spy is spy, and if you put an embassy in a country, of course, the host country is going to do whatever they have to do to spy on it. But the ability for us to have some visibility into it was fascinating to me. And I think shout out to the Microsoft Threat Intel team for this Secret Blizzard. They were deploying this Apollo Shadow, installing Trusted Root Certificate to facilitate interception and persistence. I know they have SORM and they probably have access. I mean, we had a LabsCon talk this year about like what you can actually compel versus having to hack into. And I thought this Russian state actor spying on embassies in Moscow using some pretty cool, tricky techniques and being tied back to Turla, which is an old 20-year-old operation, 20-year-old operation.
More than 20 years, probably.
This also made your list, Costin, as a standout story.
Yeah, and again, like you were saying, shout outs to Microsoft for publishing. When everyone is publishing about Chinese APTs and it's like China, it's good. Like, I mean, yes, sure, China, of course, they're everywhere, but it's good to see a bit of these stories like about Turla. I don't think anyone calls them Secret Blizzard. Everyone calls them Turla. Would be nice to, I don't call them Turla Blizzard. Why all these names make no sense? But anyways, yeah, shout outs for writing about Turla in 2025. I mean, I can imagine ourselves in 5-10 years from now still talking about Turla, still talking about how amazing they are and what they can do with less, or what they can do without any 0 days, what they can do without any specialized man on the side, 0-day insertion, quantum inserts, and so on. So yeah, the poor man's man on the side.
All right, I think that might be our show for this week. If we can just, Juanito, you wanted to spend some time giving some heartfelt shout outs to some folks. Before I let you go, let me give mine quickly because I want to get it out of the way. We talk, in the entire episode, we talked about APT research and all these bad news stories. There were some good news stories this year, and I just want to touch on two small things that I know we talked about it in another podcast and they made news and so on, but not as... I don't think it was treated with the significance it was meant to be. And this is this Apple memory integrity enforcement on iPhone 17 and the ability to really manage memory safety on iPhones. I think that's going to have a long tail of good consequences. And I want to shout out to Ivan Kirstich and the SEER team. Mention also that his Hexacon keynote is now on YouTube, where he describes and documents this. It was fascinating to me to see him on stage talking about this stuff. And in the background, there was a Celebrite and all the sponsors for the conference were all the companies that were compromising this thing. So that was it. That was cool awesome as hell. And then Cloudflare, we've described them as good stewards of the monoculture position they find themselves in. I want to shout out the Cloudflare security team. Whatever they do affects all of us. And Juanito, you've talked about them having intimate knowledge of their stack to be able to do investigations very quickly and to recover very, very quickly. And they just put out a new blog post on the small resilience plan moving forward about things. So, the people in the trenches doing the kind of defensive engineering never get mentioned, and I wanted to shout them out. Quickly, ESET. I want to give the ESET security research team a shout out as well for consistently putting out good research, especially in the below the OS firmware bootkit space. These guys are routinely finding that stuff and documenting it. I mentioned Citizen Lab, Amnesty International, Recorded Future, Julian, all the folks focused on commercial spyware, PSOAs. We're always happy. And then noticeably Bloomberg security coverage has massively improved over that, I would say, the last year. It's noticeable to me. A shout out to all the guys at Bloomberg, all the journalists at Reuters, ProPublica, all these Kim Zetter and these guys chasing these stories. Shout out to them. Keep on rocking. Like, you guys are the only hope we have at digging into some of these things. That's it from my side. Juanito, what do you got?
Kostin, do you want to say something on shoutouts? Because I basically have the list from like the season ending. It's like 100 people that I have to thank.
Let me very quickly go through what was left. I thought Elastic also published a bunch of cool things. Checkpoint, same for Checkpoint. Shout outs to our good friend Silas, who posted a very cool research on the Census blog. I think he actually authored 2 of them. They were like really interesting. We didn't mention a lot about the React to Shell, which was one of the biggest stories of the year. And I think that Amazon have been posting a lot of good stuff recently. They started in a weird fashion, but
I'm gonna take credit for that.
CJ, right? CJ got better and better. Like
shout out to CJ Moses.
Shout out to CJ, absolutely. Also, shout out to our friends at Arctic Wolf, to everyone there in their research team. They're like publishing also some cool stuff on Russian APTs, including Russia's GRU Unit 29155. Yeah, to everyone who is listening to our podcast, and they've been like a top 1% spending more than 5 years of their life listening to the last year of our podcast.
It's insanity to me that people are listening to millions of minutes.
It's insane. Thank you for that. And last but not least, thank you to my colleagues from TLP Black. Shout outs to Kurt, to
thank
Dan.
You for the t-shirt.
And thank you to you guys, to our advisors. Thank you to Vitaly, a very wise man who never ceases to amaze me with his advice. To Marco, who is always like reliable, and he knows so much about almost everything. Honeypots, network, technology, everything. Of course, to you two guys, to Jax and Ryan, my brothers. I love you. Thank you for being here with me, and let's keep doing this. It's a highlight of my week. Every week, this is a highlight.
It's been a great year of connecting once a week and shooting the breeze.
And the best part, the cats.
Absolutely.
Oh, where's Toro? He's. I've got to take him to the vet. He's like got this wet cough. I'm like super scared. But
that's your cue to. That's our cue to wrap up the show. We got to get
the
Toro
fourth
to the
buddy
vet.
is like he's. I'm like scared of if he's not okay. But anyways, we'll do that today. I'll do my bit, and everybody can leave at this point if you know, because this feels like the end of. I was saying it feels like the end of like a season of Saturday Night Live when you just like shout every person who has done anything. But I gotta say, like, this year has been super fucking rough for me. It's been a lot of work, a lot of sort of insane stuff has been happening, a lot of advances and changes in my life, and good, bad, and everything in between. And there have been so many people who have been genuinely amazing and surprising, and taken time to contribute, to lend an ear, to lend a hand, to take the time to check in on me, even when I have been atrocious at answering text messages, atrocious at staying in touch, and have actually made this thing real, and have made this happen, and have made my life sort of viable and more valuable. So Chris St. Myers, Tom Hagel, Phil Stokes, the folks at Labs, everybody in the Labs team, Alex Milankowski, Jim, Alex Delamotte, our boy Vitaly Kamluk, of all people. It was just amazing to have with us Dakota Carey, just all these, phenomenal people. We have Gabe Shapiro with us, who is a true friend to me from back in the KL days. Steve Stone, Gregor Stewart, who've done a great deal of mentorship for me. Tomer Weingarten, who I don't know why this man has had the faith in me to support me through all this stuff, but it has really enabled me to do some pretty amazing things this year. Friends, Vitor Ventura, Mike Hom, Martin Wendigensen, the AI Sommelier Society people, Thomas Ridd, Alex Perez Palma, and Emily, Vizzy Stark, and Genevieve. I hope Genevieve is recovering fine. And we've had a lot of health scares with people in our community this year, and I don't want to take them for granted. Casey John Ellis, Mark Rogers, who's here with us, but by the grace of God, do we have this wonderful human being still with us here, and I'm infinitely grateful that is the case. I'm just going to keep at it in no particular order. I mean, Hamid, Brandon Levine, Thomas Ridd, Mac, Donald McCarthy, Matt DeVoe, Matty DeVoe, Joel, you know who you are, Kyle Kritz, Bernardo, who's now in our chat and has created literally the fourth buddy for us. You know, we gave so much feedback on VT, but
you give VT a lot of shit. Shout out to Bernardo for putting up with us.
Shit. We gave VT a lot of shit. I hope it was obvious to see just how much we fucking love that product and how much it has done for us. Dude, like VT was one of the things that made my career. I am where I am in large part from that service, and I will always love it and be grateful for it. And the one thing you can't fault me for is like I have wanted it in my life from the first day I ever got to see it. I've never wanted to live a day without access to VirusTotal, whether that's wise or not. Tyler King, the best recruiter in the game. Maria Markstatter, Azaria, John McDonald, good luck with the new startup. Nicole Fishbein, who, we've done research together and traveled around and done all this crazy shit. She's been a phenomenal ally. Ryan Hoffman, Michael Moore, who's now at Anthropic, Katie Vogel at the AP, Ben Armstrong, Silas Cutler, like the most shouted out person of all time in the past 2 years. I literally had to make a t-shirt that says Silas is our infrastructure. Courtney Duff, who makes all of LabsCon happen. If it was her birthday recently, Mission Control Barbie, if it weren't for her, we would not have a LabsCon. So God bless that woman. Max Smeets, who's been just a phenomenal friend to all of us and has done big things in the past year. Andrew McPherson getting shouted out by Sama Senpai of all people for his work. I know he's had a rough year too, and it's amazing to see him do cool shit. Lynn Saxton, Melissa Bishoping, Rob Reagan, our friends at Microsoft. You don't exist, and I won't name any of you, but God bless you for staying in there and dealing with all that bullshit. Good luck. Katie Masuris, Andrew Quill, Will A., you know who you are. Trisha Narain, of all people, if it weren't for Ryan, we wouldn't have the podcast.
Watching.
And if it weren't for Trisha, we would still be, doing this on our own dime and sort of just trying to make do in our own kind of fan thing. Dre, Shannon, Rob Gilduda, the absolute, genius daddy of all things radios, LLMs, and robots. Our friend Fede from Echo Party. I'm really looking forward to Echo Party Miami, and we'll have some things to announce on that soon. Dave Itel, who's just been a great friend, and it's been awesome to watch him do his thing at OpenAI, and also a big fan of the show and always a contributor to us. Will Pierce and the folks at Dreadnought, Danny Moore, Pasquale and the PivotCon guys like Bartosz and all the folks that have put that together. Tyler Robinson, Steve Adair, who joined us on the, here and brought us to FTSCon. Chris Neckar, Adam Russell, who helped over at Oracle with some of the recent stuff that they've been working on. Trevor Hilligos, MJ Emanuel, Tara Hairston, Sergio Coronado, Jolene Parrish, Tejas Patel, Perry Adams, Rolf Rolls, the guys at Vector 35 who dealt with all of our shit. Dude, seriously. Mike Matonis, God bless you, apart from being an amazing researcher.
Good morning.
Dude, Mike Matonis literally hooked me up with the local lender that financed my house and the fucking real estate agent that helped me find it. So if it weren't for Mike, I would literally not have this house. So God bless him. And Alexei Bolasol, Chris Inglis, Rob Joyce, our friends Miko, Max, Alex, Halvar Flake, who's just been awesome lately with all these insights into stuff in complexity and these LLM systems, somebody who actually understands the fucking math. Dan Gear, who's still publishing shit. I can't believe we didn't talk about his indeterminism post. And Dmitry Alperovich, Ashley Shen, our Dutch friends, our Fort friends, Liam Amorchu, Joe Fitzpatrick, Danny Adamitis, Michael Barguri, all of you, Inbar Raz. Okay, the list could go on forever. Thank you for sticking around. But honestly, I cannot fucking believe that this podcast is what it is now. And it wouldn't be anywhere. I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for all of you. So thank you. It has been the most insane year of my life. So thank you all, and thank you too for all the ranting, guys.
I don't think anyone of us can top that. Did you write all those names down with AI, or you did it with a human?
No, dude, I fucking sat here and write that shit. I wrote that shit down like a Santa list.
Shout out to all my friends, people like Tara Hairston, who listen to the show and send in notes every now and then.
Wow.
We have a lot of people who listen quietly in the background without much thing. We've got some support this year as well from folks at Binarly. There's a lot of folks there holding the fort down in tough conditions. I want to give a shout out to Alex Matrosov on that team as well. You mentioned Silas. You mentioned all the guys, the names of the folks who've been super.
Over at Valadin.
Oh my
Dude.
gosh, it never ends. It never ends. And I think they know. They're aware.
Yeah.
We love you all. Have a happy new year, everyone. And may we get to 2026 and not be complaining about the same things over and over. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for hanging out.
Happy
Paka
New
paka.
Year.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all things in between.
This episode of The Three Body Problem is sponsored by ThreatLocker. Let's be real. Most cybersecurity tools only act after the damage is done. Detection is reactive. Prevention is what actually changes the game. That's where ThreatLocker comes in. Instead of chasing threats, ThreatLocker helps organizations stop them at the source before they ever run. Only approved applications, scripts, and executables are allowed. Everything else? Denied by default. It's zero trust made practical and scalable for modern environments. Learn more at threatlocker.com/3bodyproblem and see how default deny can finally give you real control over your environment.